A single kiss in the dark. A child conceived in secret. A man who builds cages from obsession. When housekeeper Elena Varga broke the rules to save her employer's life, she never imagined one fevered kiss would destroy everything she knew. Adrian Vasily, feared antiquities kingpin, master of the mansion's locked gates, doesn't just want her. He claims her. Now she's pregnant, trapped, and terrified of the truth clawing through her chest. She's falling in love with her captor. Can love bloom in a gilded prison, or will possession destroy them both? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The March storm hit the Vasily estate like divine punishment. Elena Varga pressed her forehead against the cold window of the servants' wing, watching rain slash sideways across the manicured grounds. Lightning fractured the sky, illuminating the main house, that Gothic monument to wealth and secrecy that had loomed over her life for 6 months. Somewhere in that fortress of locked doors and whispered warnings, Adrian Vasily was alone, and he was dying. "Don't be stupid," Elena whispered to her reflection. The girl staring back looked younger than 21, dark eyes too wide, brown hair escaping its practical bun. "It's not your business. It's never been your business." But her hands were already reaching for her coat. Mrs. Kovac had been clear during Elena's first day. "You clean the east wing. You stock the kitchens. You do not, under any circumstances, enter Mr. Vasily's private quarters. He values his solitude above all else." The last girl who forgot that rule left the same day. 6 months of invisible service had taught Elena the rhythm of the house. She knew which floorboards creaked, which hallways the security cameras monitored, which doors stayed locked even to the senior staff. She'd learned to move through the mansion like a ghost, seen only when necessary, forgotten immediately after. She'd also learned that Adrian Vasily was a man surrounded by employees but utterly alone. The head of household security, Dmitri, had mentioned it that afternoon with clinical detachment. "Mr. Vasily is unwell. Fever. He's refused medical attention." A pause. Then the addition that made Elena's stomach clench. "He sent everyone away from the 3rd floor. Says he'll be fine by morning." Everyone else had shrugged and continued their duties. In a house built on boundaries and unspoken rules, Adrian Vasily's privacy was sacred, but Elena had lost her mother to pneumonia 3 years ago. She remembered fever's deceptive calm before the crisis, the way pride could kill faster than disease. Thunder shook the windows. Elena grabbed her coat and left the servants' wing before courage could abandon her. The main house swallowed her into silence. Chandeliers hung dark in the grand foyer, and her footsteps on marble echoed too loud despite her care. She'd cleaned these halls 100 times. The antique console tables worth more than her yearly salary, the paintings whose subjects seemed to watch her pass, the fresh flowers replaced daily even though Adrian rarely entertained guests. A museum, she'd thought once. A mausoleum for a man who'd forgotten how to live in it. The grand staircase curved upward into darkness. Elena's hand trembled on the banister as she climbed. 2nd floor, guest suites that never hosted guests, a library she'd dusted but never dared explore. 3rd floor, forbidden territory. The landing stretched before her like a challenge. Wall sconces cast pools of amber light across Persian runners and closed doors. At the corridor's end, double doors of dark wood stood slightly ajar. His suite. Elena's pulse hammered in her throat. She could still turn back. Should turn back. This was exactly the kind of boundary crossing that got girls like her fired, blacklisted, thrown back into the poverty she'd barely escaped. A sound stopped her cold. Low, rough, unmistakably pain. Her feet moved before thought could interfere. Adrian Vasily's bedroom was a study in controlled elegance gone to chaos. The massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, its curtains half drawn. Books lay scattered across the nightstand beside a glass of untouched water. A fireplace burned low, casting restless shadows across walls lined with art Elena couldn't begin to value. The air hung thick and close, heavy with the sick-sweet smell of fever. And in the bed's center, barely visible among tangled sheets, Adrian himself. Elena had seen her employer exactly 4 times in 6 months, always from a distance, always in motion. A tall figure in expensive suits, dark hair precisely styled, moving through the mansion with the leashed energy of something predatory. Rumors followed him like smoke. Antiquities dealer with connections to every black market in Europe. A man who could procure impossible treasures for collectors who didn't ask questions. Someone who'd built an empire on secrets and had the scars to prove it. The man before her now looked nothing like that legend. Adrian lay on his back, one arm flung across his eyes, the other clutching sheets soaked with sweat. He'd stripped to the waist, revealing a torso mapped with old violence, scars silvering his ribs, a burn mark on his left shoulder, the ghost of what might have been a knife wound low on his abdomen. His chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. "Mr. Vasily?" Elena's voice came out barely a whisper. No response. She moved closer, medical instinct overriding fear. His skin burned under her tentative touch. 40 degrees Celsius, easily. Maybe higher. Dark hair stuck to his forehead in damp strands, and even unconscious, pain tightened the corners of his mouth. "You stubborn fool," Elena breathed. She grabbed the water glass, then hesitated. He needed fever reducers, cool compresses, someone who knew what the hell they were doing. Adrian's hand shot out and seized her wrist. Elena gasped. His grip was iron despite the fever, and his eyes, when they opened, were the color of winter ice, unfocused and burning. "Katerina." His voice scraped like broken glass. "You came back." "No, I knew you would." His other hand rose to her face, fingers tracing her cheek with devastating gentleness. "You always come back, even after everything, even after—" His words dissolved into a language Elena didn't recognize. Russian, maybe, or Greek, but she understood the tone. Longing and rage and grief twisted together into something raw. "Mr. Vasily, I'm Elena, your housekeeper. You're sick, you need—" "Liar." He pulled her closer with surprising strength until she half knelt on the bed beside him. "You left me. You took everything and you left. Please, I'm not—" "Don't lie to me again." His thumb brushed her lower lip and Elena's breath stopped. "Not when I can finally touch you. Not when you're finally here." She should pull away. Should run. Should call for help. Instead, she found herself staring into eyes that saw someone else entirely. Someone who'd broken him so completely that fever could resurrect her ghost. "Who is Katerina?" Elena whispered. Pain flashed across Adrian's face. "The woman who taught me that love is just another word for weakness, that trust is a weapon, that the only thing worse than being alone is believing you're not." His hand slid into her hair, and Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. "I would have given you everything," he continued, words slurring at the edges. "Built you a palace, drowned you in jewels, killed anyone who looked at you wrong, but you wanted him instead, chose him, let him—" He broke off, shuddering. Elena's free hand found his chest, feeling the too-fast rhythm of his heart. "I'm sorry," she said, though she didn't know what she was apologizing for. "I'm sorry someone hurt you, but I'm not her. I know." His eyes focused on her suddenly, piercingly clear. "You're the girl who moves through my house like a shadow, who arranges flowers in the library when she thinks no one's watching, who hums while she works, old songs, sad songs." Elena froze. "You've seen me?" "Every day." His grip softened but didn't release. "You think I don't notice? You think I don't know the exact moment you enter a room, the sound your footsteps make, the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating?" Heat flooded Elena's face. "I should go. Stay." It wasn't quite a command, wasn't quite a plea. Just stay. Let me pretend, just for tonight, that someone gives a damn whether I wake up tomorrow. The vulnerability in his voice broke something in Elena's chest. She should leave. She should. Instead, she reached for the water glass again. "Then let me help you, please." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or the faintest shadow of relief. He released her wrist. Elena helped him sit up enough to drink, supporting his weight as he swallowed. His skin burned through her clothes, and this close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the way fever had stripped away every careful defense. "When did you last eat?" she asked. "Don't remember. When did the fever start?" "Yesterday, maybe the day before." He sagged back against the pillows, eyes drifting closed. "Doesn't matter." "It matters if you die, you impossible man." The corner of his mouth quirked. "Worried about your job?" "Worried about my conscience." She stood, moving to the bathroom she knew adjoined the suite. Marble and gold greeted her, a palatial space that felt utterly sterile. She soaked towels in cold water, grabbed more from the cabinet, and returned to find Adrian watching her through half-lidded eyes. "You're still here," he murmured, "against all common sense." Elena arranged cool compresses across his forehead and chest, trying to ignore the intimacy of touching him this way, trying not to notice the definition of muscle beneath scarred skin, the way his breathing steadied slightly at her touch. Why Katerina? The question escaped before she could stop it. Adrian was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My fiancé, 5 years ago. I was younger then. Stupid enough to believe in fairy tales." "What happened?" "I gave her access to everything. My business, my accounts, my goddamn soul." Bitterness dripped from every word. "Turned out she was working with my biggest rival. Fed him information for 2 years. The night before our wedding, she disappeared with half my assets and the man she'd been sleeping with the entire time." Elena's hand stilled on his shoulder. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. Trust no one. Need no one. Love is just leverage waiting to be used." "That's a terrible way to live." His eyes opened fully, fixing on her with uncomfortable intensity. "Says the girl who's been invisible for 6 months. Who works herself to exhaustion for wages I probably spend on wine. Who has no family, no friends, nothing but this job that could vanish tomorrow." The accuracy of his observations stung. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you're alone too." His voice softened. "I recognize it. Like calls to like." Thunder cracked directly overhead and the lights flickered. In the moment of near darkness, something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of shared isolation, of parallel loneliness. Elena swallowed hard. "Your fever's still too high. I should call a doctor." "No doctors." His hand found hers again, grip weak but insistent. "They ask questions, create records. I have enemies who'd love to know I'm vulnerable." "Then what?" "You're here." His thumb traced circles on her palm, the gesture almost unconscious. "That's enough." It wasn't enough. It was dangerous and inappropriate in crossing every line. But when Elena tried to pull away, his grip tightened. "Please." The word came out broken. "Just until the fever breaks. I don't want to be alone tonight." Later, Elena would blame what happened next on compassion, on the storm that made the world feel small and urgent, on the vulnerability in a ruthless man's voice. But in her heart, she'd know the truth. She stayed because some reckless part of her wanted to. Hours blurred together. Elena kept the compresses cool, forced water past Adrian's lips, monitored his breathing as fever pulled him in and out of delirium. He spoke in fragments, names she didn't recognize, business deals gone wrong, memories of childhood in a language that sounded like broken poetry. And always, eventually, back to Katerina. "I would have burned the world for you," he whispered once, staring at Elena with eyes that saw someone else. "Would have given you anything. Why wasn't I enough?" "You were enough," Elena found herself saying, though it felt like sacrilege to answer for a ghost. "Some people just can't see what they have." "You're kinder than she deserves." "I'm speaking to you, not her." His hand rose to her face again, and this time Elena didn't pull away. His palm was too hot, but his touch was achingly gentle, the caress of someone who'd learned to fear tenderness because it had been weaponized against him. "You're real," he murmured, as if testing the words. "Not a dream, not her, real." "I'm real." "Elena." Her name in his voice sounded like a revelation. The invisible girl who sees everything. "I see you're still burning up. Drink more water." But when she tried to pull away, Adrian sat up with startling energy, fever-bright eyes locking onto hers. "Do you know what the worst part was? Not the betrayal, not the theft. It was that she never looked at me the way you're looking at me now." Elena's breath caught. "How am I looking at you?" "Like I'm human." His hand slid into her hair, and Elena's pulse went wild. "Like the scars don't scare you. Like you actually give a damn if I live through the night." "Mr. Vasily?" "Adrian." He leaned closer, and Elena could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell the fever sweat and something underneath it. Cedar and old books and expensive cologne. "Say my name." "This isn't... we can't." "Say it." It came out breathless. His eyes darkened. Again. "Adrian, you're sick. You don't know what you're..." "I know exactly what I'm doing." His thumb traced her jaw, her throat, the hollow where her pulse hammered. I'm taking something I want. I'm being selfish. I'm breaking every rule I set for myself after Katerina. Then stop, Elena whispered, even as her body swayed toward him. I can't. His forehead touched hers, and she could feel him shaking. From fever or restraint, she couldn't tell. I've watched you for 6 months. Wanted you for 6 months. Told myself 100 reasons why I couldn't have you. And tonight you walked through that door anyway. Stayed anyway. Touched me anyway. To help you, to save me. His lips brushed her temple, and Elena's eyes fluttered closed. No one's tried to save me in 5 years. Adrian, tell me to stop. His mouth moved to her cheek, her jaw, so close to her lips that Elena forgot how to breathe. Tell me this is wrong. Tell me you want to leave. She should. Every self-preservation instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, Elena's hand rose to his face, fingertips tracing the sharp line of his cheekbone. I can't. Something broke in Adrian's expression, relief and hunger and desperation tangled together. Then let me have this. Just this. Just tonight. The kiss, when it came, felt like falling. Adrian's mouth captured hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything Elena knew about him. Not the ruthless antiquities dealer, not the man who'd built an empire on secrets, just someone starved for connection, pulling her closer like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Elena gasped against his lips, and he took the opening, deepening the kiss with a quiet sound of need that vibrated through her entire body. His hand tangled in her hair while the other splayed across her lower back, and Elena forgot about boundaries and consequences, and the morning that would inevitably come. She only knew his mouth was burning hot and desperately skilled, that his hands were shaking as they explored her waist, her ribs, the curve of her spine, that when she kissed him back, tentative at first, then with growing confidence, he made a sound like prayer. Elena. Her name was ragged on his lips as he broke away just enough to breathe. You taste like... He didn't finish. Just claimed her mouth again, pulling her fully onto the bed until she half lay across him. Elena could feel his heart hammering against hers, could feel the fever heat of his skin through her clothes, could feel how much he wanted this, wanted her, with an intensity that should have terrified her. Instead, she felt powerful. Here was a man who controlled empires, who made dangerous people nervous, who locked himself away from the world, and he was trembling beneath her touch, coming apart for her, choosing her. Adrian's mouth moved to her throat, pressing kisses along her pulse point that made Elena's breath hitch. Tell me this is real, he whispered against her skin. Tell me I'm not dreaming. It's real. Her fingers threaded through his sweat-damp hair. I'm real. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and the naked longing in his face made Elena's chest ache. This wasn't just attraction, it was starvation, the look of someone who'd convinced himself he'd never be touched with gentleness again. I should let you go, Adrian said, even as his hands tightened on her waist. Should send you away before I do something we'll both regret. Do you want me to go? No. The word came out fierce. I want to keep you here. Want to learn every sound you make, every place that makes you gasp. Want to fall asleep with you next to me and wake up to find you're still here. I want... He broke off, jaw clenching. I want too much. Elena's thumb traced his lower lip. What if I want it too? You don't know what you're saying. Then tell me. Explain it to me. Adrian caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm that felt like a brand. If we do this, if I take what I want tonight, there's no going back. I don't do casual, Elena. I don't do temporary. When I claim something, I keep it. Warning bells should have sounded. Red flags should have waved. Instead, Elena heard herself say, Then keep me. Adrian's control shattered. He kissed her like a man possessed, rolling until she was beneath him, caging her with his body while his mouth conquered hers. Elena arched into him, hands exploring the scarred landscape of his back, feeling muscles shift beneath burning skin. Too many clothes, Adrian growled against her throat. His fingers found the buttons of her shirt, and Elena's common sense made one last, feeble protest. You're still sick. I'm burning up because of you. He pushed the fabric aside, revealing skin he immediately claimed with lips and teeth. Because I've wanted this for so long. Because you walked into my room like an angel, and I finally get to be selfish." His mouth moved lower, and Elena forgot how to form words. She could only feel the scrape of stubble against sensitive skin, the heat of his breath, the overwhelming intensity of being desired this completely. "Adrian, say my name like that again," he commanded, voice rough. "Say it while I make you mine." And Elena, lost in fever and feeling and the intoxicating power of being wanted, surrendered completely. Dawn broke cold and gray. Elena woke slowly, registering warmth at her back and an arm banded across her waist. For one disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory crashed back in vivid detail. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no! She turned carefully, afraid of what she'd find. Adrian slept on his side facing her, features relaxed in a way she'd never seen. The fever had broken sometime in the night. His skin was cool now, breathing deep and steady. Morning light revealed details the darkness had hidden. The silver threading his dark hair at the temples, the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the surprising length of his eyelashes. He looked younger in sleep, almost peaceful. Elena's chest tightened with a confused tangle of emotions. What had they done? What had she done? She'd slept with her employer, in his bed, while he was sick and vulnerable and thinking she was someone else. Except he hadn't, had he? By the end, when whispered words turned to gasps and pleasure, he'd known exactly who she was, had said her name like a prayer, like a claim, like someone marking territory. When I claim something, I keep it. Panic clawed up Elena's throat. She needed to leave, needed to get back to the servants' wing before anyone noticed her absence, needed to pack her few belongings and disappear before Adrian woke and remembered. His arm tightened around her waist. Don't. His voice was sleep-rough but clear. Don't run. Elena froze. You're awake. Have been for 10 minutes. Adrian's eyes opened, and they were that impossible winter ice blue, sharp and aware and entirely focused on her. Watching you think of all the ways to escape. I should go. We should. This was a mistake. You were sick. You weren't thinking clearly. I was burning with fever and more lucid than I've been in years. He pulled her closer, until no space remained between them. Try again. Mr. Vasily? Adrian. His hand cupped her face. After last night, you don't get to go back to Mr. Vasily. Not ever again. Heat flooded Elena's cheeks. Last night was you saving my life? Was you staying when anyone else would have run? Was you letting me touch you, taste you, claim you? His thumb brushed her lower lip. Was you saying my name like I was something worth keeping? You were delirious about Katerina, yes. Not about you. Adrian's expression hardened. Never about you. Do you understand? When I touched you, I knew exactly who was in my arms. When I kissed you, I knew exactly whose mouth I was claiming. When I made you mine, I knew exactly what I was taking. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in Elena's stomach. I'm your housekeeper, she managed. We can't. You were my housekeeper. Adrian rolled until she was beneath him, his weight pressing her into the mattress. Now you're something else entirely. What? His smile was slow and dangerous. Mine. Before Elena could protest, he was kissing her, morning gentle, but no less thorough than the night before. She melted into it despite every logical objection, hands finding their way to his shoulders, his hair, the strong column of his throat. When Adrian finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. I meant what I said last night, he murmured against her lips. I don't do casual, I don't share, and I sure as hell don't let go of things I want. Adrian, you have two choices, Elena. His nose brushed hers, the gesture almost tender. Run now before this gets complicated, before I convince you to stay, before you wake up one morning and realize you've fallen into something you can't escape. Or stay. Let me be selfish. Let me keep you. His hand slid into her hair. Let me show you what it's like to be chosen, to be wanted, to be cherished instead of used. Elena's heart hammered. You don't even know me. I know you arrange flowers in empty rooms because beauty matters even when no one's watching. I know you hum while you work because silence feels too lonely. I know you check the library books even though I never asked you to, making sure the rare editions are properly stored. Adrian's voice softened. I know you're afraid of being invisible but terrified of being seen. That you've been alone so long you've forgotten what it feels like to matter to someone. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. How? Because I'm the same. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. So stay. Be selfish with me. Let's be terrible together. Every instinct screamed danger. This was how girls like her got hurt, falling for powerful men who made impossible promises. This was obsession dressed up as devotion, possession wearing the mask of protection. But when Elena looked into Adrian's eyes, she didn't see the ruthless dealer everyone feared. She saw someone who'd been betrayed so badly that isolation felt safer than risk. Someone offering her the one thing she'd been denied her entire life, to matter to someone. If I stay, she whispered, this doesn't mean I won't be your kept woman. I won't be locked in a golden cage. No cages. Adrian's thumb traced her jaw. Just choices. Every morning, you choose to stay. Every night, I prove you should. And if I choose to leave? Something dark flickered across his face. Then I'll let you go. But I'll spend every day until then convincing you not to. It was a promise and a threat wrapped together. Elena should refuse, should remember that men like Adrian Vasily didn't change. That last night was fever dream insanity, that mixing business with pleasure destroyed everything. Instead, she found herself nodding. Okay. Okay, you'll stay? Okay, I'll try. Elena met his gaze steadily. But I need you to understand something too. I'm not Katerina. I won't betray you, but I also won't disappear into your shadow. If this is real, if you want this to be real, then I need to exist outside this bed, outside these walls. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly he smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. There she is. What? The Elena who broke every rule to check on me, who argued with a man twice her size while he was delirious, who demanded to be seen. He kissed her softly. That's who I want. Not a shadow. Not a ghost. You. Relief and terror warred in Elena's chest. This is insane. Completely. Adrian pulled her closer, tucking her head beneath his chin. But I haven't felt this alive in 5 years, so let's be insane together, see what happens. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and new. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been dark the night before, painting the room in shades of gold. Elena closed her eyes and let herself feel the moment. Warmth and safety and the steady rhythm of Adrian's heart beneath her palm. Tomorrow would bring complications. Questions from staff, renegotiations of boundaries, the terrifying vulnerability of being wanted. But for now, wrapped in the arms of a man who'd spent 5 years building walls, Elena chose to believe in possibility. She chose to stay. The transformation happened slowly, then all at once. For 3 weeks, Elena lived in a strange limbo between worlds. By day, she maintained the fiction of being Adrian's housekeeper, cleaning rooms she no longer slept in, preparing meals she'd later share at his private table, moving through the mansion with practiced invisibility, while the other staff remained blissfully unaware. By night, she belonged entirely to him. This is temporary, Elena told herself each morning, watching Adrian dress for meetings in suits that cost more than she'd earned in a year. Just until we figure out what this is. Just until the fever breaks. But the fever never broke. If anything, it intensified. Adrian touched her constantly when they were alone, fingers trailing down her spine as she arranged flowers, lips brushing her temple while she read beside him in the library, hands finding her waist whenever she passed within reach. It was as if the weeks of watching from a distance had created a hunger that proximity only sharpened. I can't stop, he admitted one night, pulling her into his lap while rain drummed against the windows. I've tried, told myself to give you space, let you breathe. But then you walk into a room, and I forget every rational thought. Elena's fingers traced the scar on his shoulder, a burn mark she'd learned came from a deal gone violently wrong. Is that what this is? Obsession? Probably. Adrian's honesty was brutal. Does it scare you? It should have. Instead, Elena found herself leaning into his touch, craving the intensity of his focus like a drug. For someone who'd spent her entire life invisible, being seen Truly Seen by Adrian Vasily was intoxicating. Sometimes, she admitted, but not the way you think. Then how? I'm scared of losing myself in you, of forgetting who I was before this. Elena met his gaze, of waking up one day and realizing I've become what you need me to be instead of who I am. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on her hip. Then don't. Stay exactly who you are. Stay the girl who breaks rules because compassion matters more than consequences. Stay stubborn and principled and too brave for your own good. He kissed her softly. I don't want to change you, Elena. I want to keep you whole. The promise sounded beautiful. Elena wanted desperately to believe it, but she was beginning to understand that Adrian Vasily didn't know how to want something without consuming it. The first sign came 2 weeks into their secret arrangement. Elena had mentioned, casually she thought, that she missed her weekly visits to the small bookshop in the village where she'd worked before the Vasily estate. The owner, Mr. Castellano, he used to let me read the new arrivals before they went on the shelves. I haven't seen him since I started here. Adrian had nodded, seemingly unconcerned. We'll go this weekend. But when Saturday arrived, Elena woke to find not just a car waiting, but Dmitri and 2 other security personnel. What's this? She asked, still half asleep. Adrian appeared behind her, already dressed. Protection. The village isn't secure. It's a bookshop. In broad daylight. You're with me now. That makes you a target. He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone might mention the weather. Dmitri goes where you go. Elena's stomach tightened. I don't need a bodyguard to buy books. You do if someone decides to use you against me. Adrian's hand found the small of her back. I have enemies, Elena. People who'd love nothing more than to find my weakness and exploit it. So I'm your weakness now? His eyes darkened. Catastrophically. They went to the bookshop with 3 guards forming a perimeter that made Mr. Castellano's eyes widen in alarm. Elena tried to browse normally, but every reach for a book was shadowed by Dmitri's presence, every conversation cut short by Adrian's impatient energy. On the drive back, Elena stared out the window in silence. You're angry, Adrian observed. I'm suffocating. His jaw tightened. I'm keeping you safe. You're keeping me isolated. Elena turned to face him. That's not the same thing. You want me to risk your life so you can browse books alone? I want you to trust that I can walk through a village without being kidnapped. You don't understand my world because you won't let me. The words burst out sharper than intended. You keep me locked in that mansion like some precious object. I haven't seen friends in weeks. Can't go anywhere without guards. I exist only in the spaces you've decided are safe. Adrian's hand found her thigh, grip possessive. Would you rather I didn't care? That I let you wander into danger because independence matters more than your safety? I'd rather you see the difference between protection and possession. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. But that night, when Adrian reached for her in the darkness, Elena went to him anyway, hating herself a little for how easily his touch could make her forget every reasonable objection. I'm trying, he whispered against her throat. I know I'm too much, too intense, too controlling, but I don't know how to do this halfway. Elena's fingers tangled in his hair. Then learn. Because I can't be your prisoner, Adrian. I won't survive it. You're not my prisoner. You can leave whenever... Can I? She pulled back to meet his eyes. Honestly, could I walk out tomorrow and you'd just let me go? Something dark and complicated moved across Adrian's face. I'd let you walk out the gate. Whether I could stop myself from following is another question entirely. The honesty was terrifying. Elena kissed him anyway, pouring frustration and fear and desperate affection into the contact. They made love with an edge of anger that left them both breathless and raw. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and half light, Adrian's voice came quiet. Teach me. Show me where the line is, because I genuinely don't know anymore. It was the most vulnerable admission he'd made since that fevered night. Elena pressed her face into the curve of his shoulder and tried to believe they could find balance. But the cage was already being built, bar by golden bar. The second sign came when Elena's phone rang one afternoon while she was reading in the garden. A number she didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end sent warmth flooding through her chest. Elena? It's Marie from the shelter. Elena sat up straighter. Marie ran the women's shelter where Elena had volunteered before taking the Vasily position, a safe house for those escaping abuse. They'd worked together for 2 years, becoming genuine friends in the process. Marie, I'm so sorry I haven't called. Work has been consuming your entire life, I know. Marie's tone held gentle reproach. Which is why I'm calling. We're hosting a fundraiser next month. I was hoping you might help organize it like you used to. Elena's heart leaped. A connection to her old life, to work that mattered. I'd love to, What fundraiser? She hadn't heard Adrian approach. He stood a few feet away, expression unreadable. Elena covered the phone. For the women's shelter. I used to volunteer there. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. I see. Elena? Marie's voice came tinny through the speaker. You still there? Yes, sorry. Text me the details. I'll see what I can do. After she hung up, Adrian settled onto the bench beside her. You volunteered at a women's shelter. For 2 years, before I came here. Elena studied his face. Why do you look like that? Like what? Like you're calculating something. Adrian's hand found hers. I'm wondering why you never mentioned it. You never asked about my life before. The truth of it seemed to strike him. You're right, I haven't. He was quiet for a moment. Tell me about it. The shelter. Elena described Safe Harbor, the small building that housed up to 15 women and their children, the classes they offered on financial literacy and job skills, the quiet courage of women rebuilding their lives after escaping violence. She talked about Marie's tireless advocacy, about the little girl who'd given Elena a drawing that still hung in her room. Adrian listened with complete attention, thumb tracing patterns on her wrist. When she finished, he said simply, I'll fund it. Elena blinked. What? The fundraiser. How much do they need? Adrian, that's not... I wasn't asking for money. I know, but you care about it, which means I care about it. He lifted her hand to his lips. Let me do this. Let me support something that matters to you. Warmth bloomed in Elena's chest. That's actually really generous. I'm capable of generosity when properly motivated. His smile was wry, though I have one condition. And there it was, the catch. What? I go with you to the fundraiser. Meet the people you worked with. See this part of your life. It seemed reasonable, sweet even. Okay, but when Elena called Marie back with the news, her friend's response was cautious. That's incredibly generous, but Elena, are you sure about this? About the donation? It'll help so many. About him. Marie's voice lowered. I've heard things about Adrian Vasily. He's not exactly known for his philanthropy. You've heard rumors. I know him. Do you? You've been there less than 2 months and already you sound different, distant. When's the last time you did something just for yourself? Elena wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. When had she last done something without considering Adrian's schedule, his preferences, his control? I'm fine, she said finally. Better than fine. I'll see you at the fundraiser. After hanging up, Elena sat in the garden for a long time, watching shadows lengthen across the manicured lawn. The estate's beauty felt oppressive suddenly. Too perfect, too controlled, too much like a museum where she was just another carefully curated piece. That night, Adrian made love to her with aching tenderness, whispering promises against her skin. And Elena, despite the growing unease in her chest, let herself believe them. She was beginning to understand that love and possession could wear the same face. The breaking point came 4 weeks after that first fevered kiss. Elena woke one morning feeling nauseated, barely making it to the bathroom, before her stomach rebelled. She blamed stress, lack of sleep, the rich meals Adrian insisted on sharing. When it happened again the next day, and the next, she blamed a virus. But when her period, normally precise as clockwork, didn't arrive, cold dread settled in her stomach. Number. Impossible. They'd been careful. Mostly. That first night had been fevered and reckless, but since then, Elena's hands shook as she counted backward. 6 weeks since the storm. 4 weeks since her last period. 2 weeks of mounting symptoms she'd willfully ignored. She needed a test, needed to know for certain before panic could take root. But buying a pregnancy test meant leaving the estate, which meant Dmitri and questions and Adrian inevitably finding out before she had time to process. "You're thinking very loudly." Lena jumped. Adrian stood in the bathroom doorway, hair sleep mussed, wearing only pajama pants. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to know something's wrong." He crossed to her, hands framing her face. "Talk to me." "I'm fine. Just tired." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You're pale. You've barely eaten this week, and you keep disappearing to the bathroom." Adrian's eyes searched hers. "Elena, if you're sick, I'm not sick." "Then what?" The words stuck in her throat, too terrifying to voice, but Adrian's gaze was relentless, reading her the way he read ancient texts, looking for the truth hidden between the lines. Understanding dawned slowly across his face. "You think you're pregnant." It wasn't a question. Elena's silence was answer enough. For a long moment, Adrian didn't move. Then carefully, his hands slid from her face to her shoulders, her arms, finally settling on her waist. "How late are you?" 2 weeks, maybe more. I haven't taken a test. It might be stress, or I'll have Dmitri bring one." "No." The word came out sharp. "I don't need the entire household knowing before I even know myself." "Then I'll go. What do you need?" The offer was so unexpected that Elena's eyes stung. "You'd do that?" "Elena." Adrian's voice held a strange quality. Not quite fear, not quite wonder. "If you're carrying my child, there's nothing I wouldn't do." The intensity in his words sent alarm bells ringing. "Adrian, we don't even know if, but we will, soon." He kissed her forehead. "Wait here." He was gone 20 minutes, long enough for Elena to spiral through every possible outcome. If she was pregnant, everything changed. The delicate balance they'd been negotiating, the tentative boundaries, the slow building of trust, all of it would shatter under the weight of a child. Adrian would never let her go then. Never let their child go. She'd be bound to him permanently, not by choice, but by biology. When Adrian returned with 3 different pregnancy tests, his expression was carefully neutral. "The pharmacist said to use first morning urine, so we should wait until—" "I can't wait." Elena grabbed the boxes. "I need to know now." Adrian nodded. "I'll be right outside." "You don't have to." "I'm not leaving you alone with this." So he waited while Elena locked herself in the bathroom with shaking hands and 3 plastic tests. The instructions blurred before her eyes, but the process was simple enough. Pee on stick. Wait 3 minutes. Learn whether your entire life is about to change. She managed 2 of the 3 tests before nausea overwhelmed her again. When Elena emerged, pale, trembling, clutching the tests, Adrian was exactly where he'd promised to be. His eyes went immediately to her hands. "How long?" he asked quietly. 2 more minutes. He guided her to the bed, settling her against his chest with infinite care. Elena focused on breathing, on the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, on anything but the plastic sticks that would determine her future. "Whatever they say," Adrian murmured against her hair, "we'll handle it, together." "You say that now. I say that always." He turned her to face him. "Elena, listen to me. If you're pregnant, if we're having a child, that's not a trap. That's not a cage. That's a gift I don't deserve, but will spend the rest of my life being grateful for." "You don't mean that. You don't want children. You've never mentioned—" "I never let myself want them." Adrian's hands framed her face. "After Katerina, I convinced myself that family was just another weakness to be exploited, that bringing a child into my world would be cruel. But that was before you. Before I knew what it felt like to want something so much that it terrifies me." Elena's vision blurred. "Adrian, check the tests." Her hands shook so badly that Adrian had to help her. 3 plastic windows, 3 identical results, 2 pink lines, positive. The words seemed to echo in the silence. Elena stared at the tests, unable to process the magnitude of what they meant. She was pregnant, carrying Adrian Vasily's child, bound to a man who collected priceless antiquities and kept his world locked behind iron gates. "Elena," Adrian's voice cut through the spiral. "Breathe. I can't. We barely know each other. I know you stayed when anyone else would have run. I know you see me as more than my reputation. I know you're stubborn and compassionate and exactly the kind of mother I'd want for my child." His forehead pressed to hers. I know this is terrifying, but I also know I'm not letting you face it alone. Something in Elena cracked. She turned into his embrace, letting tears come in great shaking sobs. Adrian held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, the other pressed protectively against her still flat stomach. "We're having a baby," he murmured, and the wonder in his voice was almost enough to eclipse Elena's fear. "We're having a baby." When the tears finally subsided, Elena pulled back to find Adrian's eyes suspiciously bright. "Are you crying?" she asked. "No." He was absolutely crying. "I'm just processing." Despite everything, Elena laughed, a watery, desperate sound. "This is insane." "Completely." Adrian's smile was tremulous. "But we're good at insane, remember?" Reality crashed back. "I need to see a doctor, need to know if everything's okay, need to figure out how this even works." "I'll arrange everything. Private physician, best prenatal care, whatever you need." "Adrian, I can't afford—" "You're having my child." His voice turned fierce. "Money is irrelevant. Your comfort, your health, the baby's well-being, those are the only things that matter." It should have been reassuring. Instead, Elena felt the cage closing tighter. "I need some time to think, to process this alone." Adrian's hands tightened on her waist. "You want me to leave?" "Just for a few hours, please." She could see the war in his expression, the desire to stay versus the need to respect her request. Finally, reluctantly, he nodded. "I'll be in my office. Call if you need anything." After he left, Elena sat in the enormous bed and tried to imagine a future she'd never planned for. A child growing inside her. A life bound to Adrian's. The freedom she'd been fighting for slipping further away with each passing moment. Marie's voice echoed in her memory, "When's the last time you did something just for yourself?" Elena looked around the luxury bedroom that had become her prison and her sanctuary. At the life that had seemed like a fairy tale but was beginning to feel like a trap. She loved Adrian. She did. But love wasn't supposed to feel like drowning. Her hand settled on her stomach, on the tiny cluster of cells that was already changing everything. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the baby who couldn't yet hear. "I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess." But even as fear consumed her, a small, stubborn part of Elena began to plan. She couldn't run. Not pregnant, not without resources, not from a man with Adrian's reach and obsession, but she could prepare, could save money, could maintain connections, could make sure that if she ever needed to leave, she'd have somewhere to go. It was a betrayal of everything Adrian had offered, but it was also survival. And Elena had learned long ago that sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes you needed an exit strategy too. The decision came 3 days later, during the first prenatal appointment. Adrian had arranged for a renowned obstetrician to visit the estate rather than risk Elena's exposure in a clinic. Dr. Morrison was professional and thorough, conducting an ultrasound that filled the bedroom with the sound of a rapid heartbeat. "There," the doctor said, pointing to a small blob on the screen. "That's your baby, about 6 weeks along, developing normally." Elena stared at the grainy image, trying to comprehend that the tiny flutter was a life she and Adrian had created. Adrian's hand found hers, grip almost painful. We made that." "You did indeed." Dr. Morrison smiled. "I'll give you both a moment." After the doctor left, Adrian pulled Elena into his arms, still staring at the ultrasound printout. 6 weeks. That means the first night, Elena confirmed. "When you had fever. When you saved my life and gave me a future in the same breath." Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. "Elena, I know you're scared. I know this happened faster than either of us planned. But I need you to understand something." He turned her to face him, hands framing her face with devastating gentleness. "I'm never letting you go. Not because I'm forcing you to stay, but because I'll spend every day proving you should want to. I'll give you freedom within safety, space within devotion, everything you need to stay whole while being part of us." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But I need you to stop looking for exits. Stop planning your escape. Give us a real chance." Elena's breath caught. "How did you—" "Because I know you." Adrian's smile was sad. "Because I'd be planning the same thing if I were in your position. Because I see the fear in your eyes every time I hold you too tight." Tears slipped down Elena's cheeks. "I don't know how to do this. How to love you without losing myself." "Then we'll learn together." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But you have to stop running from me. Even in your head, you have to let me prove I can be what you need. And if you can't, then I'll let you go. The words seemed to cost him. I won't make you a prisoner, Elena. I won't force you to stay against your will, but I'm asking, begging, for the chance to make you want to stay. It was everything she'd wanted to hear and everything she was terrified to believe. Elena looked at the ultrasound picture, at the tiny life depending on her choices, and felt the weight of the decision crushing her. Stay and risk being consumed. Leave and risk losing everything. In the end, she chose the coward's path. She chose to wait. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. I'll stop looking for exits. The relief in Adrian's expression was almost painful to witness. He kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious he'd almost lost. Thank you, he breathed against her lips. I'll prove you made the right choice. I swear it. But as Adrian held her close, one hand protective over their child, Elena felt the cage click shut. She'd just promised to stop planning her escape. And Adrian Vasily, for all his protestations of freedom, had just made sure she never could. The pregnancy transformed Adrian in ways Elena hadn't anticipated. He became obsessive about her health, monitoring her meals with the precision he usually reserved for authenticating priceless artifacts. Prenatal vitamins appeared on her nightstand. Her favorite foods materialized in the kitchen before she could mention craving them. He'd wake in the middle of the night just to ensure she was sleeping comfortably, adjusting pillows with infinite patience. You're hovering, Elena said one morning, watching him fuss over her breakfast tray for the third time. I'm attentive. Adrian's hand settled protectively on her still small bump. There's a difference. You reorganized my entire vitamin schedule yesterday. Dr. Morrison said optimal absorption requires specific timing. Adrian. Elena caught his hand. I love that you care, but you're going to drive yourself insane if you micromanage every detail. He was quiet for a moment, thumb tracing circles on her palm. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. Complications, birth defects, the 1,000 ways I could fail to protect you both. The vulnerability in his voice made Elena's chest ache. Nothing's going wrong. Dr. Morrison said everything looks perfect. For now, but anything could happen. So we'll handle it. Together. Like you promised. She pulled him down beside her. But you have to trust that I can take care of myself. That our baby and I are stronger than you think. Adrian buried his face in the curve of her neck. I'm terrified of losing you. Both of you. Of finally having something worth living for and watching it disappear. Elena held him, understanding for the first time the depths of his fear. This wasn't just about control. It was about a man who'd lost everything once before, desperately trying to prevent history from repeating. You won't lose us, she whispered. But you have to let me breathe. He nodded against her shoulder, and for a few weeks things improved. Adrian made conscious efforts to give Elena space, to ask instead of command, to trust instead of control. The mansion's invisible walls seemed to recede slightly. Elena began to believe they might actually build something healthy. Then Sophia was born, and everything changed again. Labor came 3 weeks early on a December night, fierce and fast. Elena barely made it to the private medical suite Adrian had installed on the estate's second floor before contractions consumed her world. 12 hours of agony, of Adrian's hand crushed in hers, of Dr. Morrison's calm voice guiding her through each push, and then a cry that split the air like a miracle. She's perfect, Dr. Morrison announced, placing a tiny, furious bundle on Elena's chest. Completely healthy. Congratulations. Elena stared at her daughter through a haze of exhaustion and wonder. Sophia had Adrian's dark hair and Elena's delicate features, tiny fists waving in outrage at being thrust into the cold world. Her eyes, when they finally opened, were the impossible blue of her father's. We made her, Elena breathed, unable to comprehend the magnitude of it. Adrian stood frozen beside the bed, staring at his daughter with an expression Elena had never seen before, pure, undiluted awe mixed with terror. Adrian? She prompted gently. He seemed to shake himself. Then carefully, as if approaching something infinitely precious and fragile, he reached out one finger. Sophia's tiny hand wrapped around it with surprising strength. The sound Adrian made was barely human, something between a laugh and a sob. She's so small, he whispered. How is she so small? She's perfect. Elena guided his hand to cradle Sophia's head. Our perfect girl. Adrian sank onto the bed beside them, gathering both mother and daughter into his arms with heartbreaking gentleness. I never knew, he said, voice rough. Never understood what this would feel like. Looking at her and knowing I'd burn the world down to keep her safe. It should have been sweet. Instead, Elena felt the first stirrings of new fear, because she recognized that look in Adrian's eyes. It was the same intensity he'd turned on her that fevered night, the obsessive focus that could so easily tip from love into possession. She's going to need space to grow, Elena said carefully, to explore and make mistakes and become her own person. I know. But Adrian's arms tightened fractionally. But not yet. Not while she's this vulnerable. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to establish boundaries before they calcified, but exhaustion pulled her under like a tide, and she let herself drift into sleep with Adrian's warmth at her back and Sophia's tiny heartbeat against her chest. When she woke hours later, the first thing she saw was Adrian sitting in the chair beside the bed, Sophia cradled against his bare chest. He was speaking to her in low tones, promises and vows and declarations of protection that sent ice down Elena's spine. No one will ever hurt you, he murmured. Your mother and I will make sure of it. You'll have everything, safety, education, love. You'll never know what it's like to be afraid or alone or abandoned. He pressed a kiss to Sophia's downy head. And anyone who threatens you will learn exactly what happens when they make that mistake. The darkness in his voice made Elena's breath catch. This was the side of Adrian she'd glimpsed in stories, the ruthless dealer who'd built an empire through intimidation and violence. She'd convinced herself that man had softened, that fatherhood and love had transformed him. But love hadn't changed Adrian. It had just given his darkness a new focus. The first 3 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming joy. Sophia was a relatively easy baby. She slept in reasonable stretches, nursed without issue, and filled their world with the kind of pure wonder that made everything else fade to background noise. Adrian proved to be a devoted father in ways that surprised even Elena. He learned to change diapers with meticulous precision, could soothe Sophia's cries when Elena's patience wore thin, and spent hours simply watching their daughter sleep with an expression of such profound love that it made Elena's heart ache. But the mansion's walls grew higher. Security doubled without discussion. Dmitri and his team now monitored every entrance, every delivery, every person who came within 100 yards of the estate. The gates, once merely locked, became fortified. Cameras appeared in hallways Elena had once walked freely. This is too much, she said one evening, watching feeds from a dozen new security cameras on Adrian's office screen. It's necessary. He didn't look up from the surveillance equipment. Word's gotten out that I have a family now. That makes us targets. Targets for what? We're not exactly living a public life. You don't understand my world, Elena. Adrian's voice held an edge. The people I deal with don't follow normal rules. They see vulnerability and they exploit it. They'd take Sophia just to prove they could, just to make a point. So we're supposed to live like prisoners? Never leave these walls? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Elena gestured at the screens. Look at this place. It's not a home anymore. It's a fortress. Adrian finally turned to face her. Would you rather I left you unprotected? Left our daughter at risk because you don't like feeling watched? I'd rather you trusted that we can live normal lives without turning the estate into a military compound. There's nothing normal about our lives. He stood, crossing to her with deliberate intensity. I'm not a normal businessman, Elena. I deal in antiquities that governments would kill to possess. I have competitors who've already tried to eliminate me. I've made enemies across 3 continents who'd love nothing more than to find my weakness and destroy it. His hands framed her face. You and Sophia are my weakness, my catastrophic vulnerability. So yes, I'm going to protect you with every resource at my disposal. And if that makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for keeping my family safe. Elena wanted to argue, but the fierce love in his eyes made the words stick. He genuinely believed he was protecting them. Couldn't see that the cage he was building would eventually suffocate them all. Just promise me, she said finally, that when Sophia's older, she'll get to have a real childhood, friends, school, experiences outside these walls. Of course. Adrian's answer came too quickly. When it's safe. But Elena was beginning to understand that for Adrian Vasily, It would never be safe enough. The breaking point came when Sophia was 4 months old. Elena had been nursing in the library when her phone buzzed with a text from Marie. "Haven't heard from you in months. Is everything okay? We miss you at the shelter." Guilt stabbed through her. She'd meant to stay connected, to maintain the friendships and purpose she'd built before Adrian. But between Sophia's demands and Adrian's intensity, the outside world had faded to a distant memory. She texted back quickly. "Everything's fine, just adjusting to motherhood. Coffee soon?" Marie's response came immediately. "Tomorrow? My treat. There's someone I'd like you to meet." Elena hesitated, knowing Adrian would have opinions about her leaving the estate. But the desire for normalcy, for connection with her old life, won out. "Sounds perfect," she typed. "Send me the address." She waited until dinner to mention it, choosing her words carefully. "I'm meeting Marie tomorrow for coffee. She wants to introduce me to someone." Adrian's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Where?" "A cafe in the village, just for an hour or two." "Take Dimitri." "Adrian, it's non-negotiable, Elena." His voice held that edge she'd learned to recognize, the one that said he'd made a decision and expected compliance. "You're meeting a stranger in an unsecured location. Dimitri goes with you. It's a coffee shop, not a war zone. You don't know who Marie's introducing you to, don't know their connections or intentions." Adrian set down his fork with deliberate care. "Dimitri goes, or you don't." Elena's temper flared. "You can't just dictate my every move. I can when it comes to your safety." He stood, crossing to where she sat. "I know you think I'm being paranoid, but my world is dangerous, Elena. People have died for less than what I possess. And now that they know about you and Sophia, they don't know anything because you keep us locked up like treasures in a vault." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and accusatory. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Is that what you think? That I'm hoarding you?" "Aren't you?" Elena met his gaze steadily. "When's the last time I left these grounds without an armed escort? When's the last time I made a decision without running it past you first? You say you're protecting us, but it feels a lot like possession." "There's a difference between protection and possession. Not from where I'm standing." Adrian's hands clenched at his sides. "Fine. Go without security. Meet your friend and her mysterious contact. See how safe you feel when someone follows you home, when they start asking questions about Sophia, when they realize exactly who you are to me." "You're being paranoid. I'm being realistic." He turned away, voice going cold. "But clearly, my experience means nothing. So do whatever you want, Elena. I won't stop you." The dismissal stung worse than argument. Elena wanted to push back, to fight for her autonomy. But exhaustion and postpartum hormones made everything feel overwhelming. "I'll take Dimitri," she heard herself say. "If it means that much to you." Adrian's shoulders relaxed fractionally. "Thank you." But the victory felt hollow for both of them. The next day, Elena arrived at the cafe with Dimitri maintaining a discreet distance. Marie was already there, sitting with a woman in her mid-30s who had the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. "Elena!" Marie stood to embrace her. "You look exhausted. New baby?" 4 months old. She's perfect but doesn't believe in sleep. Elena settled into her chair, acutely aware of Dimitri watching from the corner. "Who's your friend?" "This is Rachel. She runs a legal advocacy group for domestic violence survivors." Marie's expression turned serious. "Elena, I asked you here because Rachel needs help, and you're one of the few people I know with access to certain resources." Unease prickled at Elena's neck. "What kind of help?" Rachel leaned forward. "There's a woman, Anna Kozlov, hiding from her husband. He's connected, dangerous, and getting closer to finding her. She needs to disappear completely, and that takes money. Fake documents, relocation, security." "I don't have that kind of money," Elena said carefully. "But your partner does." Rachel's gaze was direct. "Adrian Vasily. I know who he is, know he has connections that could help Anna vanish." Elena's stomach dropped. "You want me to ask Adrian to help you hide someone from her husband?" "I'm asking you to save a woman's life." Rachel slid a photo across the table. A young woman with haunted eyes and fresh bruises stared back. "Anna's husband has already put her in the hospital twice. Next time, he'll kill her. We're out of options. And you think Adrian, a man with his own reputation for violence, is the solution?" "I think he's a man who understands power and how to use it." Marie's hand covered Elena's. Please, just ask him. Anna's running out of time. Elena looked at the photo, at the fear etched into Anna's face, and saw herself 6 months ago, desperate, trapped, convinced she had no choices. I'll talk to him, she heard herself promise, but I can't guarantee anything. As she left the cafe, Dmitri fell into step beside her. Everything all right, Miss Elena? Fine, just catching up with old friends. But her mind was already spinning. How would Adrian react to this request? Would he see it as an opportunity to prove himself or as an unacceptable risk? Either way, Elena had a sinking feeling that her answer would reveal exactly what kind of man she'd bound herself to. That evening, after Sophia was asleep, Elena found Adrian in his study. He looked up from paperwork as she entered, expression softening. How was coffee? Complicated. Elena settled into the chair across from his desk. They asked me for help with something. Actually, they asked me to ask you. She explained about Anna Kozlov, about the abusive husband and the desperate need to disappear. Adrian listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, silence stretched between them. This husband, Adrian said finally. How connected is he? I don't know the details, but apparently connected enough that normal channels haven't worked. Adrian's fingers drummed on the desk, a tell she recognized. He was calculating, weighing options. And you want me to help her disappear? I want you to save her life. Elena leaned forward. Adrian, she's terrified, just like I would be if I were in her position. This is a chance to use your resources for something good. My resources aren't a charity, Elena. I know, but let me finish. His voice held an edge. My resources are carefully allocated to protect what's mine. Using them for a stranger creates complications. Opens doors I've worked hard to keep closed. Elena's stomach sank. So that's a no. That's a, I need more information. Adrian stood, circling the desk to lean against it. Tell me about this husband. Name, connections. Why he's so hard to hide from. I don't have those details. Then get them. His eyes locked on hers. Because I'm not risking my family's security for someone I know nothing about. If this husband is connected to people I deal with, helping his wife could create blowback that affects you and Sophia. The pragmatism made sense, but it still felt cold. So you'll only help if it's convenient? I'll help if it's safe. Adrian's hand found her cheek. Elena, I know you want to save everyone. It's one of the things I love about you. But I have priorities, and you and Sophia are at the top of that list. Always. And Anna Kozlov? Get me information. Let me assess the risks. Then we'll decide together. It was more than she'd expected, but less than she'd hoped. Elena nodded, rising to leave. Elena. Adrian's voice stopped her at the door. I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just a man trying to keep his family safe. She looked back at him. This complicated, dangerous man she'd chosen to love. I know, but sometimes safety comes at too high a cost. The information came 2 days later via Marie. Anna's husband was Viktor Kozlov, a mid-level enforcer for the Petrov organization, a Russian crime family with reach across Eastern Europe. Elena's blood ran cold when she read the name. Even she'd heard whispers about the Petrovs, about their brutality and long memories. She brought the information to Adrian in his office. He read it in silence, expression growing darker with each line. No, he said flatly. Adrian, absolutely not. He threw the file on his desk. The Petrovs are not people you cross, Elena. They're animals who respond to any perceived slight with disproportionate violence. So we let Anna die because you're afraid? His eyes flashed. I'm not afraid, I'm realistic. Helping Anna means making an enemy of Viktor Kozlov, which means making an enemy of the entire Petrov organization. They'll retaliate. Against me, against my business, potentially against you and Sophia. We don't know that. I know exactly that. Adrian's voice rose. I've dealt with these people, Elena. I know how they think. Viktor Kozlov will see Anna's disappearance as a personal insult. He'll investigate. He'll find out I helped, and then he'll come after everything I love to teach me a lesson. So what, we just abandon her? Let her husband kill her because it's inconvenient? Yes! The word exploded out of him. Yes, we let her face her own problems because I will not risk my daughter's life for a stranger. Elena recoiled. You don't mean that. I mean every word. Adrian's hand slammed on the desk. You think I'm heartless? Fine. I'm heartless. But I'm alive, and my family is safe, and I will do whatever it takes to keep it that way. Even if it means becoming exactly what Katerina saw in you. The words came out quiet, devastating. A man who only cares about himself. Adrian went very still. What did you say? You heard me. Elena's voice trembled but held firm. You're so terrified of losing us that you've become the monster you're trying to protect us from. You'll sacrifice anyone, do anything, justify any cruelty, all in the name of keeping us safe. That's not fair, isn't it? Tears burned Elena's eyes. Look at yourself, Adrian. Look at what you're willing to let happen. Anna Kozlov is going to die, and you're going to let it happen because saving her is inconvenient. Because saving her is dangerous. Everything is dangerous to you. Leaving the estate is dangerous. Having friends is dangerous. Living a normal life is dangerous. Elena's voice broke. So we stay locked in your fortress while you make deals with the same kind of men who are trying to kill Anna. Don't you see the hypocrisy? Adrian's face had gone pale. I'm trying to protect you by becoming exactly what I need protection from. Elena moved to the door. Help Anna or don't. But don't pretend it's about keeping us safe. This is about you being too afraid to do the right thing. She left before he could respond, before tears could fall, before the weight of everything could crush her completely. That night, Adrian didn't come to bed. Elena lay awake nursing Sophia, listening to the sounds of the mansion settling around them. She'd pushed too hard, said things that couldn't be unsaid. But the truth remained. She'd asked Adrian to be brave, and he'd chosen fear. She was beginning to understand that fear could be just as dangerous as cruelty. Near dawn, Elena heard footsteps in the hall. She expected Adrian, but instead Dmitri appeared in the doorway. Miss Elena, Mr. Vasily asked me to give you this. He handed her a sealed envelope and withdrew. Elena opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Adrian's precise handwriting. You're right. I've become what I swore I'd never be. A coward dressed up as a protector. I'm going to help Anna Kozlov. Not because it's safe, not because it's smart, but because you asked me to, and because I need to prove I can still choose courage over fear. I need to prove I'm worthy of the woman who saved my life and the daughter we created. The Petrovs will retaliate. There will be consequences. But I'd rather face them as a man you can respect than hide as one you've learned to fear. Whatever happens next, know that I did this because you showed me who I could be instead of who I've been. I love you, both of you. More than safety, more than empire, more than life, and I'll spend every remaining day proving it. Elena read it twice, 3 times, trying to process the magnitude of what Adrian was promising. He was going to help Anna, knowing the risks, knowing the consequences, because she'd asked him to. Terror and pride warred in her chest. This was exactly what she'd wanted, for Adrian to choose principle over pragmatism, courage over control. But now that he'd agreed, the reality of what it meant hit her with crushing force. The Petrovs would come. Viktor Kozlov would want revenge. Adrian's choice to save Anna could cost them everything. But he was choosing it anyway. Elena clutched the letter to her chest as Sophia nursed. And for the first time since that fevered kiss, she let herself believe that the man she loved might actually be capable of change, even if that change destroyed them both. Adrian worked through the night with a precision that reminded Elena why he'd built an empire from nothing. By dawn, he'd assembled a team, not his usual security personnel, but specialists whose loyalty was bought with the kind of money that ensured absolute discretion. By noon, Anna Kozlov had new documents, a wire transfer to an account in her chosen name, and a one-way ticket to a city where the Petrov reach was minimal. Elena watched from the study doorway as Adrian coordinated the final details, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Russian to someone on the other end. When he finally hung up, exhaustion lined his face. It's done, he said quietly. Anna's on a plane. New identity, enough money to start over, contacts who can help her disappear completely. Victor will notice she's gone. Within hours, Adrian rubbed his eyes. Which is why we need to be ready for what comes next. Elena's stomach clenched. What does that mean? It means I've poked a hornet's nest and now we wait to see how badly they sting. He crossed to her, hands settling on her shoulders. I've increased security. Dmitri has orders to treat any unknown approach as hostile, and I've reached out to people who owe me favors, enough to make the Petrovs think twice before they retaliate. But they will retaliate. Probably. Adrian's honesty was brutal. Victor's not just going to let his wife vanish. He'll investigate. He'll find breadcrumbs leading back to me, and then he'll either come directly or through the Petrovs. Elena's hands shook. What have we done? The right thing. Adrian pulled her close. For the first time in years, I chose principle over pragmatism. And yes, there will be consequences. But I'd rather face them knowing I became the man you needed me to be. The conviction in his voice steadied her. I'm sorry I pushed you into this. Don't. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. You didn't push. You showed me who I'd become and gave me a chance to be better. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that courage would be enough. But fear had already taken root in her chest, whispering that she'd just traded one cage for another. This time built not from Adrian's control, but from the consequences of his choices. The first 3 weeks were deceptively quiet. Anna Kozlov's disappearance made waves in certain circles, but Victor's rage remained contained, focused inward on his own people, trying to determine who'd helped his wife escape. Adrian monitored the situation through his network of contacts, mapping Victor's investigation with clinical detachment. He's questioning everyone she knew, Adrian reported one evening, reviewing encrypted messages in his office. Friends, family, the shelter staff. He's thorough, I'll give him that. Has he connected it to you yet? Not directly, but he's getting closer. Adrian's jaw tightened. One of my intermediaries was sloppy. Used a burner phone that can be traced if Victor has the right resources. Elena's blood ran cold. How long before he figures it out? Days? Maybe a week? Adrian looked up from the screen, and Elena saw real fear in his eyes. When he does, he'll come. Not immediately. Victor's smart enough to plan. But he'll come. Then what do? We prepare. Adrian stood crossing to the window that overlooked the estate grounds. I've been thinking about your words, about becoming the monster I'm trying to protect you from, about how my old methods, intimidation, violence, overwhelming force, just perpetuate the cycle. Adrian, let me finish. He turned to face her. I built my empire on being more ruthless than my competitors, more willing to cross lines, to do what others wouldn't. And it worked. But it also made me exactly what you said, someone who only knows how to respond to threats with greater threats. Elena moved to stand beside him. So what are you saying? I'm saying that when Victor comes, I'm not going to meet violence with violence. I'm going to try something I've never attempted before. Adrian's hand found hers. I'm going to outthink him instead of overpowering him. Find a way to neutralize the threat without becoming the thing Sophia should fear. The promise was beautiful and terrifying. What if it doesn't work? Then I'll do what I have to do to protect you both. But I'm going to try the harder path first. He squeezed her hand. You asked me to choose courage. This is what courage looks like for me. Restraint instead of retaliation. Elena pressed her face into his shoulder, breathing in cedar and old books and the scent that meant safety despite everything. I'm scared. So am I. Adrian's arms tightened around her. But we're going to survive this, all three of us, I promise. It was a promise he couldn't guarantee, but Elena let herself believe it anyway. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while Elena was nursing Sophia in the library. Adrian's phone rang with the specific tone he'd programmed for priority contacts. He answered immediately, his expression going carefully blank as he listened. Where? A pause. How many? Another pause, longer this time. Understood. Keep me updated. He hung up and stood motionless for a moment, staring at nothing. Adrian? Elena's voice came out thin with fear. Victor knows. He turned to face her, and Elena saw the war in his expression. The old Adrian who would meet this threat with overwhelming violence, fighting against the man who'd promised restraint. One of his people traced the burner phone. My name came up. He's made inquiries through mutual contacts. What does that mean? It means he's confirming before he acts, making sure he has the right target. Adrian's hands clenched and unclenched. I have maybe 48 hours before he makes his move. Elena's arms tightened around Sophia, who nursed obliviously. What kind of move? Could be anything. Direct assault on the estate, though that's risky given my security. More likely, he'll try to grab one of us when we're vulnerable. Use leverage to force a confrontation. Adrian's voice had gone flat, tactical. Or he could go through the Petrovs, let them handle it officially. That would be cleaner. Cleaner? Elena's voice rang. You're talking about our lives like it's a business transaction. Because that's what it is to Victor. Adrian crossed to her, kneeling beside the chair. Elena, I need you to listen carefully. For the next few days, you and Sophia don't leave the estate. You stay in the secure wing where the reinforced walls are. Dmitri will be with you at all times. What about you? I'll be handling this. He cupped her face. Trust me, please. I know what I'm doing. But Elena wasn't sure he did. She could see the old instincts taking over, the need to control, to dominate, to meet threat with overwhelming force. The promise of restraint was already cracking under pressure. Don't do anything stupid, she whispered. Don't become the monster again. Adrian's eyes closed briefly. I won't. I'll find another way. But the conviction in his voice had wavered. That night, Elena barely slept. She lay beside Adrian, feeling the tension radiating from him, knowing his mind was running through scenarios and contingencies. Around 3 a.m., he slipped from bed and disappeared into his office. Elena found him an hour later, surrounded by files and photographs spread across his desk. She recognized some faces from news reports, known criminals, politicians, people whose names carried weight in dark places. What are you doing? She asked from the doorway. Adrian didn't look up. Research. Victor has weaknesses. Everyone does? I'm finding his. Adrian, did you know he has a daughter, 12 years old, lives with his mother in Prague while he does his dirty work here? Adrian's finger tapped a photograph of a young girl with dark braids. He's kept her completely separate from his criminal life. No one in the organization even knows she exists. Ice flooded Elena's veins. No, Adrian, no. You can't. I'm not going to hurt her. He finally looked up, and Elena saw exhaustion and desperation in his eyes. But Victor doesn't know that. If he thinks I know about her that I have the same leverage over him that he has over me, that's still using a child as a weapon. It's insurance. Adrian stood, gesturing at the files. I leak information that suggests I know about his daughter, that I have people watching her. Victor backs off because the cost of retaliation becomes too high. Or he escalates because you've threatened his child. He won't. You don't know that. Elena's voice rose, and somewhere in the mansion, Sophia began to cry. You're gambling with a little girl's safety, Adrian, making her a target just like Sophia is. How is that any different from what you're supposedly protecting us from? The words hit Adrian like a physical blow. He stared at the photograph of Victor's daughter, and Elena watched the realization dawn, that in trying to protect his family, he'd been willing to endanger someone else's child. You're right. He sank back into his chair. I'm right back where I started, finding the cruelest angle, the most devastating leverage. I haven't changed at all. Elena moved to him, hands on his shoulders. You have changed. You recognized it before you acted. The old Adrian wouldn't have hesitated. But I was still willing to do it, still saw a 12-year-old girl as a tactical asset. His voice broke. What kind of father does that make me? One who's terrified of losing his daughter, one who's willing to learn. Elena turned his chair to face her. But you're right. This isn't the answer. We need to find another way. I don't know what other way there is. Adrian's hands covered his face. Victor's coming. He won't stop until he's made his point. And every option I can think of involves becoming exactly what you're trying to save me from. Sophia's cries intensified. Elena glanced toward the nursery, torn between comforting their daughter and helping Adrian find a solution that didn't compromise his soul. What if you don't fight him at all? The idea came fully formed. What if instead of meeting threat with threat, you remove the reason for the threat entirely? Adrian lowered his hands. I'm listening. Ooh, Victor wants revenge because you humiliated him. You helped his wife escape, made him look weak. So what if you give him something that restores his reputation without requiring violence? Elena, I'm not giving Anna back. I'm not suggesting that. Elena pulled over a chair, mind racing. Victor's problem isn't really Anna. She's just the catalyst. His real problem is that he looks like he couldn't control his own household. That makes him appear weak to the Petrovs, which threatens his position. So how does that help us? What if you give him information that makes him look strong instead? Something valuable enough to the Petrovs that they forget about Anna entirely. Adrian's eyes sharpened. You're suggesting I offer Victor a peace offering, something that benefits him more than revenge would. Exactly. You deal in antiquities, which means you have access to things powerful people want. Find something the Petrovs have been searching for. Broker a deal. Give Victor the credit. Let him be the hero who secured it. And in exchange, he lets the Anna situation go. More than that, he owes you. Because you could have destroyed him by revealing his daughter, but instead you helped him advance in his organization. Elena leaned forward. It's not about being stronger, Adrian. It's about being smarter. Turning an enemy into someone who has a vested interest in your survival. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, and Elena could see the idea taking root. The Petrovs have been trying to acquire a specific piece for years. A Byzantine reliquary that's been lost since World War II. I know where it is. The owner owes me a favor. Can you get it? I can get anything if the price is right. A smile ghosted across Adrian's face, not the predatory expression Elena had learned to fear, but something closer to genuine respect. You're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm terrified and desperate. There's a difference. No. He pulled her into his lap. You just showed me how to win without becoming the monster. That's not desperation. That's wisdom. Sophia's cries had subsided to whimpers. Elena rested her head on Adrian's shoulder, feeling the tension slowly leave his body as the plan took shape. What if Victor doesn't go for it? She asked quietly. Then I'll find another angle. And another. And another. Adrian's arms tightened around her. But I won't use his daughter. I won't become what I'm fighting against. You have my word. It was the first promise Elena believed completely. The negotiation took 3 days of delicate maneuvering. Adrian reached out through intermediaries, requesting a meeting with Victor on neutral ground. The message was carefully worded. Not a peace offering or an admission of guilt, but a business proposition too valuable to ignore. Victor agreed, though he insisted on bringing 2 of his men. Adrian brought only Dmitri, a calculated show of confidence that Elena knew masked profound anxiety. If this goes wrong, Adrian said the morning of the meeting, Dmitri has instructions to get you and Sophia out. There's money in an account under your name, enough to disappear if necessary. It's not going to go wrong. Elena was trying to convince herself as much as him. Victor's smart enough to see the value in what you're offering. Unless his pride outweighs his ambition. Adrian kissed her softly. But I'm going to try. For you, for Sophia, for the man I'm trying to become. Elena watched him leave with her heart in her throat, Sophia sleeping peacefully against her chest, blissfully unaware that her father was walking into a meeting that could end in violence. The hours crawled by. Elena tried to distract herself with Sophia, with books, with anything that would keep her mind from imagining worst-case scenarios. Dmitri had left 2 other guards with her, and their presence was both reassuring and terrifying, a reminder of exactly how dangerous this situation was. Finally, after 4 hours that felt like 4 years, she heard the car return. Elena rushed to the window, relief flooding through her when she saw Adrian emerge from the vehicle, whole, unharmed, alone. She met him in the foyer, searching his face for clues. Well? He took the deal. Adrian's voice held exhausted triumph. The reliquary for his silence. He gets to present it to the Petrovs as his own acquisition, which elevates his status. In exchange, Anna Kozlov becomes a closed chapter. Just like that? Not quite that simple. Adrian guided her to the library, waiting until they were alone before continuing. Victor made it clear that this doesn't make us friends. We're not allies. But we're not enemies either. I exist in a space he's choosing to ignore, and as long as I don't interfere in his business again, he'll extend the same courtesy. And if you do interfere, then all bets are off, and the restraint he showed today disappears. Adrian's hand found her face. But I won't interfere. I'm done playing in that world, Elena. The antiquities business, the legitimate side, that's enough. I don't need the underground deals, the dangerous collectors, the constant threat. Elena wanted to believe him, but years of watching people make promises they couldn't keep had made her cautious. You'd really walk away? From everything you've built? I'd walk away from everything for you and Sophia. He pulled her close. This last week showed me something I'd been avoiding. My empire, All the power and money and connections. None of it matters if I lose my family in the process. If I become someone Sophia will someday fear instead of respect. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. You really mean that? With everything I am. Adrian's voice was fierce. I'm going to dismantle the dangerous parts of my business. Keep the legitimate antiquities dealing, the consulting, the restoration work. Build something Sophia can be proud of instead of something she'll have to justify. That's going to take time, and probably cost you relationships. Then it costs me relationships. He pressed his forehead to hers. I'd rather have less, and be someone you both can love without reservation than have everything and watch you leave because you can't reconcile who I am with who you need me to be. Elena pulled back to study his face, searching for any hint of insincerity, but all she saw was exhaustion, determination, and a vulnerability that took her breath away. Okay, she whispered. Then we do it together. We rebuild. Adrian's smile was tremulous. Together. They sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted like hope and new beginnings. Fragile things that needed care to survive, but possible nonetheless. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Adrian spent the next 6 months methodically separating his legitimate business from the shadowy dealings that had funded his empire. Contacts were severed. Deals were declined. The underground network that had once been his power base was allowed to atrophy. Some people understood. Many didn't. Adrian lost business partners who'd been with him for years, collectors who only wanted pieces that came with interesting provenance questions, intermediaries whose services were no longer required. But he also gained something unexpected: respect. Word spread in legitimate antiquities circles that Adrian Vasili had gone clean. Museums that had previously avoided him began reaching out. Universities requested his authentication expertise. Governments approached him about recovering stolen cultural heritage through legal means. I'm making a fraction of what I used to, Adrian admitted one evening, reviewing financial statements with Elena. But it's honest money. Money I don't have to launder or justify. Does it bother you? Elena asked, Sophia sleeping in her arms. Giving up that kind of power? Sometimes. His honesty was refreshing. I see opportunities I would have taken before. Artifacts that could be acquired through questionable means, deals that would triple our income. And part of me still wants to reach for them. But you don't. But I don't. He closed the laptop, moving to sit beside them. Because every time I'm tempted, I look at Sophia and remember what I'm actually working for. Not an empire. Not reputation. Just a life where she can know her father without having to reconcile the good with the terrible. Elena leaned into him, watching their daughter sleep with the same wonder that never seemed to fade. She's going to love you regardless, you know. Children are remarkably forgiving. Maybe. But I want to be someone who doesn't need forgiveness. Adrian's finger traced Sophia's tiny hand. I want to be the father I never had. The kind who shows up, who's present, who builds something worth inheriting instead of something that needs to be escaped. You're already becoming that person. I'm trying. He pressed a kiss to Elena's temple. Some days are harder than others, but you make it easier. The mansion itself began to change. The cameras were reduced to normal home security levels. The locked gates opened more frequently. Dmitri and his team remained, but became less omnipresent, their roles shifting from jailers to actual protection. Elena started leaving the estate regularly, coffee with Marie, volunteering at the shelter again, even a weekly book club in the village. Each time she left, Adrian fought his instinct to send guards, to monitor her movements, to ensure her safety through control. I hate this, he confessed after her third solo trip to the village. Every second you're gone, I imagine worst-case scenarios. But you let me go anyway. Elena wrapped her arms around him. That's growth, Adrian. Real, difficult growth. It feels like torture. Because you're learning to trust. Trust me to be safe. Trust the world to not be as dangerous as you've convinced yourself it is. Trust that love doesn't require constant surveillance. She pulled back to meet his eyes. I'm proud of you. The words meant more to Adrian than any business success ever had. Elena could see it in the way his expression softened, the way he held her just a bit closer. I'm proud of us, he corrected. You could have run. Should have run. Instead, you stayed and made me better. We made each other better. Elena's hand settled on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. That's what love does when it's real. And for the first time since that fevered kiss nearly 2 years ago, Elena truly believed they might survive this, might build something healthy from the ashes of obsession and fear. The real test came when Sophia turned 18 months old. Elena had been discussing with Marie the possibility of enrolling Sophia in a small playgroup, just a few hours a week, supervised, with children her own age. She needs socialization, Marie argued. Needs to learn to interact with other kids, share toys, develop skills outside your presence. Elena knew Marie was right, but the thought of suggesting it to Adrian made her stomach clench. Despite all his progress, letting Sophia out of his sight, out of the secured estate, would test every boundary he'd been working to establish. She chose her moment carefully, waiting until after dinner when Adrian was relaxed, Sophia playing contentedly at their feet. "I want to talk to you about something," Elena began, "and I need you to really hear me before reacting." Adrian's expression immediately sharpened with concern. "That's not a reassuring opening. Marie runs a playgroup twice a week. Supervised, small, just 4 other children Sophia's age. I want to enroll her." The silence that followed was heavy with Adrian's internal struggle. Elena could see it playing across his face, the immediate rejection, the fear, the controlling instinct warring against the man he'd promised to become. "Where?" he finally asked, voice carefully neutral. "At the community center, the one 2 miles from here." "That's not a secure location." "Adrian!" Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "She needs this. Needs to interact with children who aren't surrounded by armed guards and mansion walls. Needs to learn that the world isn't as dangerous as you've made it out to be. The world is exactly as dangerous as I've made it out to be. For you, because of the life you lived." Elena moved to sit beside him. "But Sophia's life is different. You've made sure of that. She's not growing up in the underground. She's not surrounded by criminals and dangerous deals. She's just a little girl who needs to play with other little girls." Adrian's hands clenched and unclenched, his tell when he was fighting for control. "What if something happens? What if someone recognizes her as my daughter and then we deal with it together? But we can't keep her isolated because of what ifs." Elena took his hand. "I'm not suggesting we're careless. I'll be there the entire time. Marie's background checked every family. It's as safe as it can be without locking Sophia in a tower." "I don't lock her in a tower." "Not literally, but emotionally?" Elena squeezed his hand. "Adrian, you have to let her grow. Have to let her experience the world, even the parts that scare you. That's what being a parent means." Adrian was quiet for a long time, watching Sophia stack blocks with intense concentration. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick. "What if I can't? What if every instinct I have screams to protect her and I can't overcome it?" "Then you try anyway. You fight those instincts because her well-being matters more than your comfort." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm not asking you to stop being protective, just to be protective in ways that let her breathe." Another long silence. Then, "Twice a week? For 2 hours each time. And you'll be there the entire time. I promise. And if anything seems off, you leave immediately." "Of course." Adrian closed his eyes, and Elena could feel the war in him. Finally, painfully, he nodded. "Okay, we'll try it." Elena's breath released in a rush. "Really? Really? But if I show up halfway through the first session because I can't handle the anxiety, you're not allowed to be mad at me." A laugh bubbled out of Elena. "Deal." Sophia's first playgroup session was harder on Adrian than any business negotiation he'd ever conducted. He paced the mansion for the entire 2 hours, checking his phone constantly, resisting the urge to drive to the community center just to verify Elena's safety reports. When they finally returned, Sophia chattering excitedly about a girl named Emma who'd shared her crayons, Adrian swept them both into his arms with palpable relief. "How was it?" he asked, trying to sound casual and failing completely. "It was perfect," Elena grinned. Sophia made friends, shared toys without too much protest, and only had one minor meltdown when she didn't want to leave. No strange adults? No one asking questions? Just normal parents being normal. The world didn't end, Adrian. It was just 2 hours of normal childhood. He buried his face in Sophia's hair, breathing in the scent of her. "I hated every second you were gone." "But you let us go anyway." Elena kissed his cheek. "That's what matters." Over the following weeks, it became easier. Adrian still struggled with the separation, still fought his protective instincts, but he fought them instead of indulging them, and that made all the difference. The mansion continued its transformation from fortress to home. The library where Elena had once cleaned in isolation became a family space where they read together each evening. The gardens that had felt like a beautiful prison became a place where Sophia chased butterflies under her parents' watchful but no longer smothering eyes. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the cage that had defined their relationship began to dissolve. One evening, nearly 2 years after that first fevered kiss, Elena found Adrian in the study where he'd once monitored her every move through security feeds. The screens were dark now, the surveillance reduced to normal home security. "What are you doing?" she asked, noticing the papers spread across his desk. "Restructuring my will." Adrian looked up with a slight smile. "Making sure that if anything happens to me, you and Sophia are protected but not trapped. The estate goes into a trust that you control. No obligations to continue my business, no expectations that you'll maintain relationships with my former associates. Just resources to build whatever life you choose." Elena's throat tightened. "Why are you thinking about this now?" "Because I'm finally at peace enough to consider my mortality without panic." He stood, crossing to her. "For years, the thought of dying terrified me because it meant losing control. But now, if I died tomorrow, I'd die knowing I gave you and Sophia the best version of myself I could manage. That's enough." "Adrian, I'm not planning on dying." He pulled her close. "But I am planning for every contingency that lets you and Sophia be free, even free from me if necessary." Elena pressed her face into his chest, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his growth. "I don't want to be free from you. I want to be free with you." "Then that's what we'll build." Adrian's arms tightened around her. "A life where we choose each other every day, not because we have to, but because we want to. Where Sophia grows up understanding that love is about trust and respect, not control and possession. We're already building it." "Then we'll keep building." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Together." And in that moment, surrounded by the remnants of the empire Adrian had dismantled to become someone better, Elena finally allowed herself to believe in their future. The cage was gone. In its place stood a partnership. Imperfect, still learning, but built on a foundation of choice rather than obsession. It was more than Elena had ever dared to hope for. And it was enough. The years unfolded like pages in a book Elena had never dared to write for herself. Sophia grew from a curious toddler into a thoughtful child who asked questions that challenged both her parents to examine the world with fresh eyes. By the time she turned 5, she was already showing signs of the person she'd become. Fiercely independent like her mother, strategically minded like her father, but with a compassion that belonged entirely to herself. "Why do some people have more than others?" she asked one evening at dinner, her blue eyes, so like Adrian's, fixed on her father with uncomfortable intensity. Elena watched Adrian carefully formulate his response, knowing that this moment mattered, that how he answered would shape Sophia's understanding of wealth, power, and responsibility. "Because the world isn't fair," Adrian said finally. "Some people are born with advantages, others have to fight for everything they get, and some people use their advantages to take from those who have less." "Which one are you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Adrian's hand found Elena's under the table, squeezing once before releasing. "I was born with some advantages," he admitted. "Education, connections, the kind of privilege that opens doors. But I also took things I shouldn't have, made choices I'm not proud of, built wealth in ways that hurt people, even if I didn't see them directly." Sophia absorbed this with the seriousness of someone far older than 5. "But you're different now." "I'm trying to be. Your mother showed me that having power means nothing if you use it to hurt others, that real strength comes from helping people, not controlling them." Adrian's gaze shifted to Elena, and she saw the love and gratitude there, still fierce after all these years, but tempered now with respect. "She saved me from becoming someone you'd be ashamed to call father." I wouldn't be ashamed." Sophia's voice was certain. "You're good now." "I'm better," Adrian corrected gently. "Still learning, still making mistakes, but trying every day to be someone worthy of you and your mother." Elena's throat tightened with emotion. This version of Adrian, the one who could admit fault to his daughter, who could acknowledge his ongoing growth, was so far removed from the man who'd kissed her in fever and declared her his that sometimes she could barely reconcile them. "So what do we do?" Sophia pressed. "With our more?" Adrian smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that still made Elena's heart skip. "We share it, use it to help people who need it. That's why we started the foundation, remember?" The Vasily Foundation had been Adrian's idea, launched 2 years after Anna Kozlov's escape. It focused on 3 areas: protecting cultural heritage through legal means, supporting domestic violence survivors, and providing educational opportunities for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. Elena served as co-director, using her experience from the shelter to guide their advocacy work. "I remember," Sophia nodded solemnly. "We help people escape bad situations. And we help them build new lives after," Elena added. "So they don't just survive, they thrive." The foundation had become Adrian's redemption and Elena's purpose, a tangible way to transform the empire he'd dismantled into something that created rather than consumed. They'd helped dozens of women like Anna disappear safely, funded scholarships for hundreds of students, and recovered stolen artifacts that were returned to their countries of origin. It wasn't enough to erase Adrian's past, but it was enough to write a different future. The real transformation, though, happened in the smaller moments that made up their daily lives. Adrian had learned to let Elena travel for the Foundation's work, fighting his protective instincts each time she boarded a plane. Elena had learned to recognize when Adrian's control issues were genuinely about safety versus when they were about fear, and to address both with patience instead of defensiveness. They'd learned to fight productively, to argue without cruelty, to disagree without destruction, to emerge from conflict closer rather than more distant. It hadn't been easy, and there were setbacks that sometimes felt like returning to old patterns, but they always came back to the promise they'd made, to choose each other freely, every single day. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked one night after Sophia was asleep, lying beside Adrian in the bed where everything had begun. "Giving up the empire, the power, the life you built?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, when I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted, when power was the answer to every problem. But I look at Sophia and I can't imagine trying to explain that version of my life to her. Can't imagine watching her grow up thinking that control equals love, that possession is protection." He turned to face Elena. "And I look at you, truly look at you, not as something I own, but as someone who chooses to stay. And I know I'd trade every empire I could build for this. For you looking at me without fear, for Sophia being proud instead of ashamed." Elena's hand found his face in the darkness. "I am proud of who you've become, of how hard you fought to change. I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have. You chose to." She kissed him softly. "That's what matters." They made love with the familiar ease of long partnership, no longer the desperate intensity of early obsession, but something deeper, something chosen and rechosen with each touch, each breath, each moment of connection. Afterward, wrapped in comfortable silence, Adrian's voice came quiet. "Marry me." Elena's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Not because you're trapped, not because of Sophia, not because I'm demanding it." He propped himself up on one elbow, and even in darkness, Elena could see the vulnerability in his expression. "Marry me because you want to, because choosing me once wasn't enough. You want to keep choosing me for the rest of your life." "Adrian, I know I asked before, years ago, after Sophia was born, and you said yes because you felt you had to, because the cage was still there, and saying no felt impossible." His hand found hers. "But the cage is gone now, Elena. You could leave tomorrow and I'd help you pack. Would make sure you and Sophia had everything you needed. Would let you go because that's what love actually means." Tears pricked Elena's eyes. "I know. So I'm asking again. Not as a claim, not as possession, as a question that you're completely free to answer honestly." Adrian's voice trembled slightly. "Will you marry me? Will you choose this partnership, this life, this difficult, beautiful thing we've built together?" Elena had known this moment was coming, had felt it building over the past year as their relationship evolved from survival to genuine partnership. She'd thought carefully about what her answer would be, had examined her own heart with brutal honesty. "Yes," she whispered, "not because I have to, Because I want to. Because you've proven every day that love doesn't have to be a cage. Because I choose you, Adrian Vasily. I choose us. The kiss that followed tasted like promise and possibility, like everything they'd fought for and everything they'd become. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian was smiling through tears. I'm going to do this right, not a quiet courthouse ceremony that feels like hiding. A real wedding. Your friends. Our family. Everyone who matters seeing us choose each other. That sounds perfect. And I want Sophia involved. Want her to understand that this isn't about obligation or tradition. It's about two people choosing partnership because it makes them better. Adrian's hand settled on Elena's cheek. Want her to see what love looks like when it's healthy. Elena pressed into his touch. She already sees that. Every day. In how we treat each other, how we fight and make up, how we build this life together. Then let's make it official. Adrian's smile turned mischievous, though I reserve the right to be nervous about giving a speech in front of everyone we know. The man who once negotiated with Russian crime families is nervous about a wedding speech? Completely different skill set. His expression sobered. I'm nervous about standing in front of everyone and admitting how close I came to losing you, how badly I almost destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me, how much work it took to become someone worthy of your choice. Then don't focus on the almost. Elena's fingers threaded through his hair. Focus on what we became instead. That's the story worth telling. They planned the wedding for late spring, when the estate's gardens would be in full bloom. Elena insisted on keeping it relatively small, just close friends, the foundation staff who'd become family, and a few of Adrian's legitimate business associates who'd supported his transformation. Marie stood as maid of honor, having watched Elena's journey from desperate housekeeper to confident partner with knowing approval. I worried about you, Marie admitted during dress shopping. When you first told me about him, about the pregnancy, I thought you were making the same mistake so many women make, loving someone dangerous and calling it romance. I was, Elena said honestly. For a while, the line between love and obsession was so blurred I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. But you found your way out. We found our way out together. Elena studied her reflection in the simple but elegant dress she'd chosen. He could have kept building that cage, could have used Sophia as leverage to keep me trapped. Instead, he tore it down piece by piece, even when it terrified him. Marie's hand squeezed her shoulder. That's real love, the kind that chooses the other person's freedom, even when it costs you everything. The observation stayed with Elena as the wedding approached. This wasn't just a ceremony, it was a public declaration that they'd survived the worst of themselves and chosen something better. Sophia took her role as flower girl with characteristic seriousness, practicing her walk down the aisle with intense concentration. At 6 years old, she was old enough to understand the significance of the day, even if she couldn't fully grasp the journey that had led to it. Are you nervous? She asked Elena the morning of the wedding. Elena smiled, adjusting Sophia's flower crown. A little, but in a good way. Because you're choosing Daddy? Because we're choosing each other, and choosing to build a family where love means freedom, not control. Elena knelt to Sophia's level. Do you understand what that means? Sophia's brow furrowed in thought. It means you're staying because you want to, not because you have to. Exactly. Elena's heart swelled. And it means that when you're older, we'll teach you that love should never make you feel trapped, that the right person will make you feel more yourself, not less. Like Daddy makes you feel. Like Daddy learned to make me feel. It wasn't always that way, but he worked very hard to change. And that's what real love does. It changes you, but in ways that make you better. Sophia absorbed this with her usual gravity, then threw her arms around Elena's neck. I'm glad you're marrying him. He's happier when you're around. Elena held her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her and marveling at the miracle of this small person they'd created. I'm happier when both of you are around. The ceremony took place in the estate gardens under a canopy of flowering trees. Elena walked down the aisle alone, a deliberate choice, symbolizing that she came to this marriage of her own free will, not given by anyone. Sophia preceded her, scattering petals with careful precision while guests smiled at her seriousness, and at the end of the aisle stood Adrian. He looked devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit, but it was his expression that made Elena's breath catch. Raw vulnerability and fierce love, and the kind of joy that came from something hard won. When their eyes met, She saw tears tracking down his face. Elena reached him and took his offered hands, feeling them tremble slightly. "You came," he whispered, so quietly only she could hear. "I chose to come," she corrected. "That's the difference." The ceremony was simple but profound. They'd written their own vows, and when Adrian's turn came, his voice was steady despite the emotion clear in his eyes. "Elena, 7 years ago you walked into my room during a storm and saved my life in ways I didn't understand then. You could have run from the man I was, the one who confused possession with love, control with protection. Instead, you stayed and showed me what it meant to truly love someone, to want their happiness more than their presence, to choose their freedom even when it terrified me." He paused, collecting himself. "You taught me that real strength isn't about control. It's about restraint. That power means nothing if it's used to cage the people you love. You transformed me, challenged me, refused to let me become the monster I was so close to being." His hands tightened on hers. "Today I stand before everyone who matters and promise, I will never take your choice for granted. I will never use our daughter as leverage. I will fight my worst instincts every day to be worthy of the trust you place in me. I will love you by setting you free and trusting you'll choose to stay. Not because you have to, but because we build something together that's worth choosing." Elena's turn came next, and she had to blink back tears before she could speak. "Adrian, when I met you, I was invisible. I'd learned to move through life without leaving a mark, convinced that safety meant never being seen. You saw me anyway. And yes, at first that was terrifying. Your intensity, your focus, the way you wanted to consume everything you touched." She squeezed his hands. "But you learned. You fought against every instinct that told you to cage me, and instead you chose to trust, to let me breathe, to become someone who loved me by letting me be free." She smiled through tears. "You're not perfect. You still struggle with control sometimes. You still want to protect me from every possible harm, but you fight it. You choose growth over comfort. You prove every day that people can change if they want it badly enough. Today I choose you. Not because I'm trapped, not because we have a daughter, but because you've proven that love can be transformative without being destructive. That partnership can exist without possession." Sophia watched from the front row, her blue eyes wide and intent, and Elena knew their daughter was absorbing every word, learning what love should look like, understanding that healthy relationships required work and choice and constant recommitment. The officiant pronounced them married, and when Adrian kissed Elena, it was with a gentleness that spoke of reverence rather than possession. The guests erupted in applause, but Elena barely heard them. She was too focused on the man before her, the one who'd almost destroyed them both, but chose transformation instead. The reception flowed from ceremony seamlessly, held under strings of lights in the same garden where fear had once ruled. Elena watched Adrian dance with Sophia, lifting her high and spinning until she shrieked with laughter and felt her heart overflow. "They're beautiful together," Marie observed, appearing at Elena's elbow with champagne. "They really are." Elena accepted the glass. "Sometimes I can barely believe we made it here, that we survived everything and came out whole." You did more than survive. You transformed each other." Marie clinked her glass against Elena's. "That's the real victory. Not just escaping the cage, but dismantling it completely and building something healthy in its place." Later, as the party wound down and Sophia dozed against Adrian's shoulder, Elena found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The fevered kiss that started everything. The pregnancy that had threatened to trap her. The moment she'd demanded he choose courage over violence. The slow, painful work of rebuilding trust. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks and fights and moments when Elena had genuinely wondered if leaving would be easier than staying and doing the work. But they'd persisted, and in persisting, they'd proven that love could evolve from obsession into partnership if both people were willing to change. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked, shifting Sophia's weight carefully. "Everything. How far we've come, how different this is from what I imagined 7 years ago." "Better or worse?" Elena considered the question seriously. "Different. Harder in some ways. Change always is. But better because it's real. Because we chose it instead of falling into it." Adrian's free arm wrapped around her waist. "I would have lost you if I hadn't learned to let go. I know that now. The tighter I held, the more I pushed you away." "But you learned. That's what matters." "I'm still learning." His voice held the vulnerability she'd learned to love. the acknowledgement that he wasn't finished growing, the transformation was ongoing. There are still days I want to lock the gates and keep you both safe from everything, still moments when control feels easier than trust. I know, but you choose trust anyway. Elena pressed into his side. That's the difference between who you were and who you are. They stood together in the garden as night deepened around them, their daughter sleeping peacefully between them. Around them, the estate that had once been a prison had transformed into a home, a place of choice rather than confinement. The years that followed the wedding unfolded with the kind of ordinary magic that came from genuine partnership. Adrian's legitimate antiquities business flourished as his reputation for ethical dealing spread. Museums and universities sought his expertise. Governments hired him to recover stolen cultural heritage. The foundation expanded its reach, helping more women escape dangerous situations and funding education for hundreds of children. Elena found her calling in advocacy work, using her own story, carefully edited for Sophia's sake, to speak about the complexities of domestic violence, the blurred lines between protection and possession, and the possibility of transformation. She became a voice for women who saw themselves in her journey, who understood that leaving wasn't always possible, but surviving was. And Sophia grew into exactly the kind of young woman Elena had hoped to raise. By the time she turned 16, Sophia had developed a fierce passion for ethical archaeology. She spent summers volunteering at excavation sites, learning proper preservation techniques, and arguing passionately for the return of colonial-era artifacts to their countries of origin. "You're lecturing a room full of academics 3 times your age," Adrian observed one evening after watching Sophia present at a foundation event. "Where did this confidence come from?" "From watching you become someone who admits when he's wrong," Sophia replied matter-of-factly. "And from Mom showing me that speaking truth is more important than being comfortable." Elena watched the exchange with pride and bittersweet awareness that their daughter was becoming her own person, someone who would soon make her own choices, forge her own path, possibly make her own mistakes. "She's going to change the world," Adrian said later, after Sophia had gone to bed. "She already is." Elena settled against him on the couch in the library, the same room where she'd once cleaned in invisible silence. But not by controlling it, by challenging it, by demanding better. "I wonder where she learned that." Adrian's tone was wry. "From both of us. You showed her what it looks like to change. I showed her why change matters." Elena's hand found his. Together, we gave her a foundation built on honesty instead of illusion. The conversation they'd been avoiding finally came when Sophia turned 17 and began researching universities abroad. "I want to apply to Oxford," she announced over dinner. "Their archaeology program is one of the best in the world." Elena watched Adrian's face carefully, knowing this moment would test everything he'd learned. Oxford meant Sophia would be thousands of miles away, beyond his protection, living a life he couldn't monitor or control. "That's a fantastic program," Adrian said slowly, and Elena could hear the effort in his voice. "Competitive, but you have the credentials. You're not going to argue against it? Would it matter if I did?" Sophia's eyes, so like her father's, sparkled with challenge. "Not really, but I expected at least token resistance." Adrian set down his fork with deliberate care. "Sophia, I could tell you all the reasons Oxford worries me. You'd be far from home, in a different country, without the security that—" He stopped himself, took a breath. "But those are my fears, not your limitations. You've earned the right to make your own choices. And part of being your father means trusting that your mother and I raised you well enough to handle whatever comes. Even if it means letting me be vulnerable?" Even then. The admission clearly cost him. "Though I reserve the right to call frequently and worry excessively." Sophia stood and hugged him fiercely. "I know this is hard for you, but thank you for not making it my problem." After she left, Elena moved to sit beside Adrian, taking his hand. "I'm proud of you. I'm terrified." His voice was raw. "Every instinct is screaming to find reasons she should stay, to point out dangers and complications, to build a cage around her like I did with you. But you're not. But I'm not." He turned to face Elena. "Because you taught me that love means letting go, that protection without freedom is just another kind of prison, and because Sophia deserves to become whoever she's meant to be, even if it terrifies me." Elena kissed him softly. "This is what we worked for, raising a daughter strong enough to leave because she knows she can always come back. Doesn't make it easier. No, but it makes it right. The night before Sophia left for Oxford, Elena found her in the library, the same room where so much of their family's story had unfolded. Can't sleep? Elena asked. Sophia looked up from the book she was pretending to read. I keep thinking about everything, about leaving, about what comes next. Elena settled beside her daughter. Having second thoughts? No, just processing. Sophia set the book aside. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. How did you know that staying with Dad was the right choice? That it wasn't just settling because you had me and felt trapped? The question was one Elena had been expecting, had prepared for over years of watching her daughter grow into someone who asked hard questions. I didn't always know, Elena said honestly. There were times, especially in the beginning, when I genuinely couldn't tell if I was staying because I wanted to or because I was afraid to leave. When the line between love and fear was so blurred that I couldn't find it. So how did you figure it out? I started paying attention to how I felt, not just in the big moments, but in the everyday ones. Did being with your father make me feel more myself or less? Did his love expand my world or contract it? Did I make decisions because I wanted to or because I was afraid of his reaction? Sophia absorbed this. And over time, the answers changed. As your father did the hard work of transformation, I started making choices from desire instead of fear. Started feeling more myself instead of less. Our love stopped being about possession and became about partnership. Lena took her daughter's hand, but it took time and work, and both of us being willing to change. Do you think I'll know? When I meet someone, whether it's healthy or not? I think you'll know because we taught you what to look for. We showed you that love should never make you feel trapped, that the right person will challenge you to grow, not demand you stay small to make them comfortable. Elena squeezed Sophia's hand. You watched your father learn to let me be free. You watched me learn to ask for what I needed instead of accepting what I was given. Those lessons will stay with you. I hope so. Sophia leaned her head on Elena's shoulder. I want what you and Dad have, but I also want to find it on my own terms, not fall into it because I'm not paying attention. Then you're already wiser than I was at your age. Elena pressed a kiss to her daughter's hair. But remember, even if you make mistakes, even if you choose wrong sometimes, you can always choose differently. That's what real freedom means. They sat together in comfortable silence, mother and daughter, on the edge of a new chapter, surrounded by the ghosts of what had been and the promise of what could be. The day Sophia left for Oxford, the entire household gathered to say goodbye. Adrian held himself together through the packing, the last-minute checks, the drive to the airport. But when it came time for Sophia to go through security, Elena saw his composure crack. Be safe, he said, voice rough. Call when you land. And remember, I know, Dad. Sophia hugged him fiercely. You're proud of me. You trust me. You'll worry anyway. I love you too. She pulled back and Adrian cupped her face with heartbreaking gentleness. You are the best thing I've ever created. Better than any empire, any deal, any achievement. You and your mother, you're everything that matters. We'll still be here when you come back, Sophia said gently. This isn't goodbye forever, just goodbye for now. I know, doesn't make it easier. Sophia turned to Elena, and mother and daughter held each other for a long moment. Thank you, Sophia whispered, for staying, for fighting, for showing me what love looks like when it's healthy. Elena's throat tightened. Thank you for being exactly who you are, for being brave enough to leave because you know you can always come home. After Sophia disappeared through security, Adrian stood frozen, staring at the place where she'd vanished. She's going to be fine, Elena said softly, taking his hand. I know. His voice cracked. Doesn't stop me from wanting to follow her, to make sure she's safe, to protect her from everything that could possibly go wrong. But you won't. But I won't. He turned to Elena and she saw tears tracking down his face. Because you taught me that love means letting go. That protection without freedom is just another cage. That sometimes the bravest thing we can do is trust the people we love to face the world without us. Elena pulled him close, and Adrian buried his face in her shoulder. They stood together in the airport, two people who'd survived their own worst instincts and built something beautiful from the wreckage. We did good, Elena murmured. She's strong and smart and kind. She knows what healthy love looks like. We gave her everything she needs to navigate the world. I just wish we could navigate it for her. I know, but that's not our job anymore. Our job is to trust that we raised her well enough to do it herself. They drove home in silence, both processing the strange emptiness of a house that would no longer hold their daughter's presence daily. But when they arrived, Adrian didn't retreat to his office or lose himself in work. Instead, he took Elena's hand and led her to the garden. "What are we doing?" she asked. "Remembering." He settled onto the bench where they'd sat countless times, pulling Elena against his side. Remembering who we were and who we became. Remembering why we fought so hard to build this. Elena rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of night-blooming flowers and the man beside her. "Tell me." "We were broken people who found each other at exactly the right moment. You were invisible and I was isolated. You were running from poverty and I was running from betrayal. We collided in the worst possible way, fever and desperation and all my terrible instincts. And then? And then you refused to let me cage you, refused to let possession masquerade as love. You demanded I become better, and somehow, impossibly, I found the courage to try." Adrian's arm tightened around her. "You saved me, Elena. Not just that night during the storm, but every day after. You saved me from myself. We saved each other." Elena's hand found his over her shoulder. "I was drowning in invisibility, and you made me visible. I was afraid of my own desires, and you taught me it was okay to want things. Yes, you had to learn restraint, but I had to learn assertion. We both had growing to do." "And Sophia?" "Sophia was the catalyst. The reason we had to become better instead of just surviving each other." Elena smiled in the darkness. She deserved parents who chose partnership over possession, who showed her what healthy love looks like. And somehow, impossibly, we figured out how to give her that. They sat in comfortable silence, processing the strange mixture of pride and grief that came with launching a child into the world. Around them, the estate had settled into evening quiet. No longer the fortress of Adrian's fear, but simply a home where love had learned to exist without confinement. "I never thanked you," Adrian said eventually. "For what?" "For staying, for fighting, for refusing to accept the cage I was building." His voice was thick with emotion. "You could have run so many times. Should have run. But you stayed and demanded I become worthy of that choice. I never thanked you for believing I could change before I believed it myself." Elena turned to face him, hands framing his face in the moonlight. "You're welcome. But Adrian, thank you for actually changing, for doing the work instead of just making promises, for proving that love can transform without destroying. I'm still not perfect, neither am I. But we're better together than we ever were apart. That's what matters." Adrian kissed her then, soft and deep and full of everything they'd survived together. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "What do we do now?" Adrian asked. "With Sophia gone and the house empty?" "We live." Elena's answer was simple. "We keep building the foundation. We keep helping people who need what we learned to give each other. We keep choosing each other every day, not because we have to, but because we want to." "Just us?" "Just us. At least until Sophia comes home for holidays and fills the house with stories about Oxford and archaeology and all the adventures we taught her to have." Adrian pulled Elena close again, and they sat together under the stars. Two people who'd started in fever and fear but built something lasting from the ashes of obsession. The story didn't end neatly because real love never does. There would be more challenges, more moments when old patterns threatened to resurface, more times when choosing freedom over control required conscious effort. But they'd proven they could do the work, could face themselves honestly and choose growth over comfort, could love each other fiercely while respecting each other's autonomy. And that, Elena thought, as Adrian's heartbeat steadied beneath her palm, was the real happy ending. Not perfection, but persistent choice. Not a fairy tale, but a partnership built on trust that was earned and re-earned every single day. 10 years later, Elena stood in the same garden preparing for another wedding. Sophia, now 27 and recently appointed to a prestigious position at the British Museum's Repatriation Committee, had brought home a partner who shared her passion for ethical archaeology. They'd met during a dig in Egypt, bonded over heated debates about colonial-era artifact acquisition, and fallen in love while literally rebuilding what had been broken. "Are you nervous?" Elena asked her daughter as they prepared in the same room where Elena had dressed for her own wedding years ago. Terrified. Sophia's smile was radiant, but in the good way, the I'm choosing something incredible way. Elena's throat tightened with pride and bittersweet awareness of time's passage. You're sure? Absolutely certain this is what you want? More certain than I've ever been about anything. Sophia met her mother's eyes in the mirror. I watched you and Dad build something real from something that started terribly. You showed me what it looks like when two people choose each other, even when it's hard. When love means work instead of just feeling. And that's what you have with Jordan? That's what we're building. Sophia turned to face Elena directly. We've already had the hard conversations about boundaries and expectations, about what happens when life gets difficult, about how to fight fair and choose each other even when we're angry. You and Dad taught me those conversations matter more than romance. Elena pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her and marveling at the woman she'd become. I'm so proud of you, not just for choosing well, but for knowing what questions to ask before choosing. I learned from the best. Sophia pulled back with a mischievous smile. Even if your beginning was a disaster, especially because our beginning was a disaster, it taught us what not to do, what patterns to break, what love shouldn't look like so we could figure out what it should. Downstairs, Adrian was attempting to give Sophia's partner the traditional father talk with limited success. I'm not good at this, he admitted to Jordan, who watched with patient amusement. The whole protective father routine. My instinct is to threaten violence if you hurt my daughter, but Elena's worked very hard to teach me that's inappropriate. Jordan laughed. I appreciate the restraint. But I'm going to say this. Adrian's voice turned serious. Sophia is strong and brilliant and deserves someone who will love her by setting her free, who will challenge her to grow instead of demanding she stay small, who will choose her happiness over their own comfort every single time. That's my intention. Good, because she learned from watching her mother demand exactly that from me. And if you can't give it, she won't hesitate to leave. Adrian's smile held genuine warmth. Learn from my mistakes. Choose trust over control. Love her by letting her be entirely herself. I will, but I have a question. Ask. Was it worth it? The work of transforming? All the years of fighting your instincts and learning to let go? Adrian looked across the garden to where Elena emerged with Sophia, both women radiant in the afternoon light. His eyes found his wife's, and even after all these years, Elena felt the impact of his gaze like a physical touch. Not possessive now, but full of chosen devotion. Every second, Adrian said quietly. Every difficult moment, every time I had to choose restraint over control, every instance of trusting when fear screamed otherwise, absolutely worth it, because the alternative was losing them, and they're worth more than any empire I could have built. The ceremony was simple and joyful, full of laughter and tears and the kind of love that came from genuine partnership. Elena watched Sophia and Jordan exchange vows they'd written together, promises built on honesty and mutual respect, and felt the weight of her own journey settle into something like peace. This was the legacy she and Adrian had built, not just a daughter, but a young woman who knew her own worth and demanded a partnership that honored it. Who wouldn't settle for possession dressed up as protection? Who understood that real love required work and choice and constant recommitment? After the ceremony, as the reception filled the garden with music and celebration, Adrian found Elena standing slightly apart from the crowd. What are you thinking? He asked, sliding an arm around her waist. That we did it. Elena leaned into him. We took something that started in fear and fever and built something beautiful. We broke every pattern that should have destroyed us and created something worth inheriting instead. She's happy. She's free, Elena corrected gently, which is different, better. She chose someone who loves her enough to let her be entirely herself. Like I learned to love you. Like we learned to love each other. Elena turned in his arms. It wasn't just you changing, Adrian. I had to learn too. To ask for what I needed. To demand respect instead of accepting crumbs. To believe I deserved partnership instead of settling for survival. Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. We're a mess of a success story. The best kind. Elena smiled. The kind that shows transformation is possible. That people can change if they want it badly enough. That love can evolve from obsession into something sustainable. They swayed together to music drifting from the reception, surrounded by gardens that had witnessed their entire journey, from cage to freedom, from possession to partnership, from fear to choice. "Thank you," Adrian whispered. "For what?" "For breaking into my room during a storm, for staying when any sane person would have run, for demanding I become someone worthy of you, for choosing me every day even when it would have been easier to leave." His voice cracked. "For saving my life in every way that matters." Elena's hands framed his face, thumbs brushing away tears. "Thank you for learning, for changing, for becoming the man I needed instead of insisting I accept the man you were, for loving me enough to let me be free. I'd do it all again, every difficult moment, every time I had to choose restraint over control. All of it, just to end up here with you. Even the beginning, the fever, and the kiss, and all the ways we got it wrong? Especially the beginning," Adrian smiled through tears, "because it led us here. To this moment. To Sophia building her own happiness. To us choosing each other after knowing exactly what that choice means." Elena kissed him softly, tasting salt and promise and the accumulated years of choosing each other through everything. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Come on," Elena said, taking his hand. "Our daughter's waiting to dance with her father, and I believe you promised to embarrass her with your emotional speech." "I promised no such thing." "You're going to cry. You always cry at meaningful moments now. That's your fault. You made me develop emotions beyond rage and possessiveness." Elena laughed, pulling him toward the reception. "Best decision I ever made." They rejoined the celebration, surrounded by friends and family and the tangible proof of their transformation. Sophia caught her mother's eye across the crowd and smiled, a smile full of joy and confidence and the security of knowing she'd been loved well enough to love freely. The evening unfolded in warmth and music, and the kind of magic that comes from people genuinely celebrating love. When Adrian's turn came to speak, he stood with Elena's hand in his and faced their daughter with tears already streaming. "Sophia," he began, voice thick, "your mother is right. I'm absolutely going to embarrass you by crying through this entire speech." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "But I need you to know something, to understand the gift you've given me just by existing. When you were born, I was still the man who thought control equaled love, who built cages and called them protection, who would have taught you all the wrong lessons about what you should accept in the name of love." He paused, collecting himself. "But your mother wouldn't let me. She demanded I become better. She showed me what real love looks like, the kind that requires trust instead of surveillance, that builds up instead of tearing down, that sets free instead of confining. And you've grown into exactly the kind of woman who would never settle for less." Sophia was crying now too, and Jordan's arm wrapped around her shoulders. "So my toast is this. May your marriage be nothing like the beginning of ours. May you never know what it's like to choose between love and freedom, because Jordan gives you both. May you build something healthy from the start, instead of having to dismantle something toxic and rebuild." Adrian raised his glass. "But if you ever do face that choice, if love ever starts feeling like a cage, remember what your mother taught me. Real love sets free, and anything less isn't worth keeping." The guests raised their glasses in agreement, and Elena felt tears streaming down her own face. This was the moment they'd been building toward for 17 years, the proof that transformation was possible, that broken patterns didn't have to repeat, that love could be learned even by those who'd never seen it modeled correctly. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Sophia found both her parents. "Thank you," she said simply, "for doing the work, for showing me what love should look like, for breaking the patterns so I didn't have to." Adrian pulled her close. "Thank you for being the reason we had to become better, for giving us someone worth transforming for." Elena joined the embrace, and for a moment they stood together, the family that had survived everything, built from fever and fear, but sustained by choice and commitment. When Sophia finally left to rejoin Jordan, Elena and Adrian remained in the garden as stars emerged overhead. "It's strange," Elena mused. "The story we tell about us, how it started with you sick and desperate, me breaking rules to help. A kiss in the dark that changed everything. You make it sound romantic. It was a disaster." "It was both." Elena settled against his side. A beautiful disaster that became something real because we refused to let it destroy us. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, if you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, all the pain and fear and work, would you still break into my room that night? Elena didn't hesitate. Every time, because yes, it was hard. Yes, we both made terrible choices. Yes, there were moments I genuinely thought we wouldn't survive. But look what we built. Look at Sophia and the woman she became. Look at us and the partnership we created from absolutely nothing. No regrets? Only that I didn't demand better sooner, that I let fear keep me silent when I should have spoken up. Elena tilted her head to look at him. What about you? I regret every moment I made you feel trapped, every time I chose control over trust, every instance where I thought possession was protection. Adrian's arms tightened around her. But I don't regret the journey, because it brought us here, to this moment, to a life where you choose me freely instead of staying out of fear. They sat together in the darkness, wrapped in each other, and the weight of their shared history. Around them, the estate had fully transformed from fortress to home, from cage to sanctuary, from the place where fear ruled to the place where love chose to stay. I love you, Elena said quietly. Not despite who you were, but because of who you became. Because you proved that people can change. That obsession can transform into partnership. That love doesn't have to be a cage. I love you, Adrian replied, for refusing to accept less than I was capable of giving, for demanding I become someone worthy of your choice, for staying through everything and making me believe in transformation. The words settled between them like a benediction, like the final piece of a story that had started in desperation but ended in deliberate choice. They didn't know then that they'd spend the next 20 years continuing to choose each other through illness and triumph, loss and celebration, all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that made up a life. Didn't know that Sophia would give them grandchildren who would hear the edited version of how Elena and Adrian met, the fever and the kiss, but not the fear and the cage. Didn't know that in their final years, when age had softened them both, Adrian would still reach for Elena's hand in the darkness and whisper, "Thank you for saving me in every way that matters." All they knew in that moment was that they'd survived, that love hadn't destroyed them, it had transformed them, that the cage was gone, replaced by something infinitely more precious, the daily choice to stay because they wanted to, not because they had to. And that ultimately was the only ending that mattered. The man who'd once said she could never escape had become the man she chose to stay with. The woman who'd been invisible had become someone who demanded to be seen on her own terms. Together, they'd built a family not on possession, but on choice, chosen every day, freely, for the rest of their lives. The storm had long since passed. In its place stood a partnership built on trust, transformed by time, and sustained by the simple revolutionary act of choosing love without confinement. It was enough. It was everything. It was theirs.